Okay, I'd like to call the October meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. I'd like to go over the meeting procedure on the back of the cover of the agenda. Oh, I forgot to ask you to call the roll. Paul, would you call the roll? Then we'll come back to that.
Alan Brown.
Present.
Neela Crank-Clement.
Present.
Suzanne Broadbent.
Present.
George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Klaus Rahmen Phillip.
Present.
Ann Zacharitz. Mary Jo, did I call you? Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Sorry. Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now back to the procedure. The chairman will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will discuss details of the case, calling on staff for details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of the parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to sign in, please, and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. Or 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. Contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to review items that will not be completed. And finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the Commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. Okay, now let's go on to the meeting. 2 from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer. Katie?
The only thing that I'll mention, which we didn't put on the agenda, is that we will be having a public meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. At the Grill on the Hill in Capitol Hill, if you'd like to come have some breakfast, about the National Register nomination for the Capitol Hill Commercial District.
Oh.
It's Southwest 25th Street from roughly Walker to Broadway. And that National Register nomination will be before the Commission next month, but we'll present it to the community tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Yep.
What time?
8 o'clock. It's kind of their business district meeting that we're piggybacking on.
And that's where everybody meets.
That's all I have.
Okay. On to 3, acceptance of the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any comments or corrections or a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Suzanne Broadbent, seconded by Neela Crank-Clement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. On to the code enforcement report. Anybody from the city here? Code enforcement? Any comments? Questions? Katie?
Just to note that if you see that there is a citation number actually listed, that means that it has moved from a violation notice to an actual citation, and you can contact code enforcement or the Action Center or HP staff if you have questions about any of the particular cases.
Okay, great. Nothing action on that. On to continuance, announcements, and requests. Looks like none.
No new requests at this time.
Okay. And public hearings, development structures, none. National Register, none, but maybe next month.
Yep.
C, consent docket. Would anybody in the commission or the citizens like to discuss any of these separately?
And we did have a request and a comment from one of the neighborhood review committees that one of the items be pulled from the consent docket.
I think somebody in the back, is that Marva?
That's
Could you come up and tell us?
18-156.
Okay. 156. So we're going to consider that one separately. Any others? All right, and we're going to just take that in the regular order, so it'll go in.
We'll hear that, how do we do that? We hear it, could vote on the consent docket and then hear that one next.
First?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion on the consent docket?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by, is it Neela Crank Clements, and seconded by Klaus Fromm Philip. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent docket is approved, and if you're on the consent docket, you can leave unless you just want to watch the action. So next, we'll go to the first.
So the one pulled from the consent docket was HPCA 18-00156 at 436 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Megan Kifford and Bjorn Offedal for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install driveway where none previously existed, elective, and 2, install retaining wall at proposed driveway, elective.
Okay. Is the applicant present? There you are. Okay. Could you state your name and sign in, please?
Megan Clifford.
Okay. At 436 Northwest 19th, correct?
Yes, sir.
These are recorded. That's why we like everybody to state that. Okay. Questions on this?
No, I think we just want to hear from
Okay.
whomever wanted it pulled.
Would you like to, Marla, would you like to?
Well, I'm pretty pregnant, and it's really hard to get the stroller and things up the front, like, so you can park on the side in the garage, but then you have to, on that little stairway, schlep all your stuff up. The other option is you park in the front, so then you also are taking everything up. So it's not really very conducive to modern life. And the house right across the street, 439, also has the same setup, side garage with the entrance on Walker, with also a walkway up on the side. But they have a driveway, and then everybody else has a driveway in the front. So it seems like it's not too unreasonable that other people have it, and it'd be really, really helpful. Yeah, that's the house across the street, and their garage is on the side. It just drives up on the side there to a parking pad, which is what we would do too.
Okay. Marla, do you want to?
You got it?
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. I think our thought is that one of the defining characters of those houses on the corner of Walker are the garages on Walker. And I know there's a picture of that. And it is a difficult thing to maneuver, but if we start putting all these driveways on, they're not really driveways because they don't go to a garage, they just are parking pads on the side of a house. And so this one stops at the fence, I think. And so to us, it's not a driveway. It's just a place to park. And is that what we want? Mrs. Clifford's house, the rhythm of that on 19th, is that right? Would probably be appropriate with the other houses in the area, but the house has been there for 90 years. Other people have lived there with kids, and they've maneuvered that for 90 years, and I don't quite know that we need to make exceptions to that. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it was there when they bought the house. It's been that way for a long time, and I don't think we want to establish a policy of letting people pour parking pads in the front of their house. And so I think it's an example of a situation that we need to talk more about at the appropriate time to come up with a policy on something like that. I don't know how often this is going to come up. This is probably one of the rare places where this exists, but it is a possibility. And that was mainly our comments about this particular case.
Okay. Thank you. Any commissioners have comment on this?
Well, I guess I need some clarification. There is one house that is similarly configured in a driveway or a driveway up to a parking pad has been installed across the street?
The house,
Is that what I'm hearing?
the house directly to the north across the street has the same configuration with a garage that faces the side street. And then they have a separate driveway that goes along the east side of the house. I don't know the age of that driveway. I don't know how long that's been there. I think from the pictures, it looked like it had been fairly recently replaced.
I can't tell which
It just looks
one's
like
which.
newer concrete, and it's a little wider than some of our really old driveways. But I don't know if that was replacing a historic driveway or when that was installed.
So this is the one, oh, back up one. That's the one across the street?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right across the
Okay.
street from us. And their driveway's right on, or their garage is right on the side on Walker as well.
Okay. And then yours is, can you flip to her house from the front? If there is one. There's a side.
Yeah, sorry, my husband probably should have taken a picture of the side one, or I should have taken the other house too, but theirs is on the side, just the same as ours, with a little tiny driveway that you drive into to park at the garage.
That's your, go back one, that's your, oop. From the front. I would just like to see it from the front. There's the side. That's
There.
There it is. Is that it?
Yes.
So the one across the street just goes up to a pad as well? Doesn't go to the garage?
It just goes up to a pad. They have like a gate that you open. I mean, we would be happy to, if it's an issue of our fence, we'd be happy to put a gate there too, so you drive into a parking pad behind. That's totally fine. We just, wanted to keep it simple and at least to start with, like, let's get a pad up there, let's get the driveway and get up there. But there's plenty of room in the backyard, so if the issue is all of like having a parking pad up there and having like cars visible, we could totally put a gate, which would be a separate HP application. But if we got a driveway approved, we'd be willing to work with a fence or a gate or some configuration there. There's a lot of room back there, so right now behind that fence is just a big patio, so.
Could you go to the one across the street? Paula? There. Oop. Okay.
This almost seems like an accessibility issue, whether you're pushing babies up to the house or you have trouble getting upstairs. I mean, sometimes we see people come before us and want to enlarge a garage because their car doesn't fit. And I think that's kind of outside the parameter of what, it really defines use, and we don't look at that. But I don't know, I just think of it. Guideline 2.3.5 said that it says introducing new driveways are permitted as long as they maintain the continuity of existing original or historic sidewalks and curb cut radius. So I'm inclined to move approval.
One thing about it that I looked at some of the ones that are existing there, and it seems to me in the historic construction, there would be a drive would be sort of a curve, kind of, instead of a straight line, and it minimizes the amount of retaining wall. I would like to see that instead of, cut as much as you indicated on your sketch. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
Sort
yeah.
of
I mean, I think that would look really nice.
I think it looked
I know my
better.
husband's working at the contractor. It's such a steep hill, so that's, I think, what he recommended. But we would really be fine to do a more kind of, not as,
You see them all
Steep.
over, just kind of a rolling
yeah,
curve.
that would be nice.
I kind of agree on the accessibility issue. It would continue the pattern of driveways on the block. So what do you guys think?
I took a look at this one as well, especially because we had some comments, and I agree. I don't think, there's a clear rhythm of driveways, and I don't think this is out of the ordinary, especially with the house across the street. I don't think it would be detrimental to the property or the neighborhood necessarily. I do agree with Marva. I mean, you want to, I think, reduce paving where you can, but it really is, I mean, there's steep stairs on all sides of this house. So if it does increase accessibility, I think that's a positive. I don't think it negatively takes away from the property or the neighborhood necessarily.
They're only making it 10. Is 10 the maximum for driveway, new driveway? Yes. Okay. This thing's 12 or something, 10. Okay.
Well, we still have the issue of it going to a parking pad instead of a garage. The applicant has mentioned they would be willing to put in a gate, as the people across the street have done. Is that something that the rest of the commission thinks would be helpful or appropriate here?
I think that would minimize the concrete look of it. Be part of a yard.
Where would the gate go if you were going to install a gate?
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. You either want to like move up the fence a little bit and then put the gate, or I guess you could put the gate right as is. It would just kind of go, let's see.
Where is that fence right now?
That fence is, it's kind of, so the edge of the house, it just goes parallel with the edge of the house. Now, the house across the street, the fence entrance, like where the gate is, kind of goes parallel with the edge of where the, just a little bit behind where the little side porch is, because they also have a side porch. I mean, it's a very, very similar house.
Where's that fence towards the back of your house?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that fence towards the back of your house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's parallel to the back of our house right now. I think we could probably still put in just a gate right there, and then you could pull in. It would just put more concrete in our backyard. If we could bring it up, then we could still have like, 20 feet or so pad and have less concrete in our backyard, but there's really a lot of room in the backyard, so.
I don't see another place to put a fence.
And what's
Any
the-
other place, you'd end up with more concrete.
What's the percentage for bringing the fence forward?
So the fence has to be set back 40% of the length of the side yard, so essentially 40% of the length of the side of the house. So we would just have to calculate that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, a fence or a gate that meets those guidelines could be administratively approved.
Okay.
I wonder if, because it is up on a kind of a berm, it'd be kind of difficult to see the extent of the paving, I think, from kind of street level anyways. And it seems like if you complied with the guidelines to put a gate in, it'd be, let's say, for argument's sake, roughly halfway down that facade of the house. That'd be right where you would want to park. So in that case, I think you'd either have to extend the paving back further, that you could park the car behind the gate, if that makes sense, because I don't think you'd want to park it in front of the gate at that point.
That would be more traditional way to park behind the house than to the side of the house.
So maybe the preferred option would be to extend the paving back farther, have
Yeah.
a gate.
And then you would eliminate some of the width where it abuts the house on the side.
Yeah, you could leave that landscaping.
Allow some landscaping at least, just put the parking here.
But is that going to affect, is that going to be an accessibility issue where they'll need to add a walkway or something, a pathway?
Is there a side door?
I'm sorry, was there a what?
Side door?
Yeah, there's a side door on the porch, and then in the backyard, there's a door that leads to the kitchen in the
Okay,
back.
so up by the porch, so
Yeah.
not on there, but up in the front, so.
So you could put in a little sidewalk that goes to the back door if the parking pad was back a little bit.
Yeah, I think even the current plan, like where we would, so you bring it up 10 feet, but then up there, where are you, we have the AC, whatever they're called, the compressors, those big AC things. So it kind of widens a little bit right there, and then it would connect with the driveway, or with the walkway already in the back, or on the side. Because like, on that side porch right there, there's some steps on the south side of it. There's a couple steps that you walk up to, just like one, though.
So if we're doing what we're talking about, that fence would stay kind of where it is, then you would put the parking area immediately inside that fence.
Yeah, exactly. So we could park our cars
So
there, or,
So it'd be less concrete visible from the street.
Well, when we look at this photograph, when we look at the top of the hill, you can't see
Can't see
any
much.
of the existing
But
concrete.
cars would be parked there.
Well, when you have a driveway,
But-
regardless of whether or not you have a gate,
But the way
there
this
may or
is,
may not be cars parked in that driveway. And so you may want to balance that thought with much more paving located beyond the fence that they may or may not park on
the way it's shown,
versus a shorter amount of paving.
the way it's shown right now, you could park 2 cars in front of that fence, which is not normal to have
Well,
pad next to the house. I think it would be better to have the parking behind the fence, myself. What do you guys? I'm just me.
I don't think there's anything that's going to require anyone who owns this house to park beyond the fence, though,
That's true.
regardless of whether or not
Right.
there's a gate.
It's true.
My inclination would be, kind of like you're saying, it's up on a hill, so you can't really see. I think in the interest of reducing paving as much as possible, maybe if you continue the 10-foot width of the drive instead of bumping out for 2 cars, that way one person can drive up there, park, access a house. If anyone else wants to drive or park, you still have the garage. And I would keep the paving to a minimum. You wouldn't have to add a bunch of paving behind the fence. The fence could stay.
So what are you proposing?
I think if we propose that the driveway stay 10 feet wide the whole way down, possibly, but then stop in front of the fence, so you're not increasing paving, unnecessarily, possibly.
Okay. If you had 2 cars, just park in front of each other.
Right.
Okay.
And if you don't like that, then
that okay?
park in the garage. And
I agree with that, then it would become more like a driveway.
Yeah. To the pad.
And there could be a sidewalk back to the porch, and the applicant could work with staff to redesign that area and look at the location of the fence.
Where the fence is shown on your drawing, is that where it is now?
I'm sorry, what?
Where the fence is shown on your drawing, is that where it is now?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where it is now.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. So work with staff on reconfiguration of the pad.
Do we need a continuance?
I think everybody's clear on what you've asked for. If you're comfortable approving it, we can revise with the applicant and get those to staff, or continue it if you all want to see it again.
So we also need to talk about the rolling terrace and making it more of having the drive follow that. Okay. So then we could approve with conditions that, if everyone's okay, I'll just make a motion, okay? Approve HPCA 18-00156, items 1 and 2, to install a driveway and retaining wall, according to the specific findings in the staff recommendation, and with the conditions that the applicant work with staff to provide drawings to show that the entire length of the driveway width to be no more than 10 feet, and I guess whatever sort of sidewalk needs to attach the driveway to the house. And then also showing a driveway following the berm and rolling terrace, or / rolling
closely,
terrace,
yeah. And then-
more closely.
Adding if there's a relocation of the fence, that needs to be shown.
Okay,
Add that too.
okay, thank you.
Okay with that? We haven't voted yet. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Neil Crane Cleveland, second by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Well, you have been approved. Thank you. That was Suzanne. I'm just telling Paul.
Okay. Cases for individual consideration. HPCA 18-00049 at 805 Northwest 39th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Frederick Kruger for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace wood garage doors with steel doors, elective.
Hey, is the applicant present?
Mr. Kruger is not present. He has been working with staff this past week towards a proposal for these garage doors that will replicate the existing garage doors, except that he does not propose to have any glass within the openings of the garage doors. That will reduce the weight of the doors to some extent, and put him in a position where he doesn't have to do a lot of modification to these openings to accommodate wood doors. He has turned in a significant amount of documentation at this point and plans to finalize that within the next couple of days. That would then put this proposal in a position where it could have been administratively approved rather than coming to the commission.
So he's going to install wood without vision panels to closely match the existing.
Yes.
So should we continue it to give him time to finalize all of that with you, or should we vote to
If
approve
you're
it?
comfortable with staff administrating those final details, it would speed up the process for him to get an approval today.
Okay? Assuming he submits what's acceptable. So what do? We approve it pending your review?
Just with the condition that
Condition?
that final design be submitted to staff.
Okay?
And it'd be wood. Oh, I make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00049, which was originally to replace wood garage doors with steel doors, with the condition that a new design with wood garage doors is submitted to staff that is acceptable for administrative review.
Okay? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Mr. Kruger, you've been approved.
HPCA 18-00138 at 425 Northwest 18th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application of John Curran for certificate of appropriateness to one construct addition elective. And you do have at your seats the one piece of documentation that the staff report says we were missing, which is their window specifications. So other than that bit of documentation, staff doesn't have any remaining concerns on this application.
Okay?
Good afternoon. I'm Dylan Curran. I'm the homeowner of 425 Northwest 18th.
Okay.
Would just add a couple things in addition to the report that the staff prepared, and that is what's being proposed is an addition over what is currently an addition to the original home. So the original home was built in 1923. Best we can tell, the addition we're building on top of was put in the 1960s, and they put it in with a flat roof. And what the report doesn't reflect is that flat roof has some pretty significant leakage problems. We've repaired it, or attempted to repair it, I should say, several times. And what our contractor tells us is that the way the flat roof is designed, it's going to continue to have problems as we live in the house. Any repair really is a temporary repair. And so we'll have to put some sort of sloped roof over the existing addition if we continue to live there. So sensing opportunity, we decided we'd just put a new room on top of it, which would have a sloped roof. We think that we've chosen a design which is complementary to the existing structure. Another item that I want to bring to the Commission's attention is, and I don't believe it's reflected in the staff report, I was here before your committee 5 or 6 years ago for and was approved for another addition in the backyard which required a lot of brick. And one of the issues before the Commission at that time was whether the brick that I was going to use would match the brick of the existing house. And we were able to find brick that very closely matched it. And that's what's shown right here in this photograph right here. Below the pergola, immediately below those planters, is the new brick. And just to the left of the iron gate is the old brick. And you can see for yourselves that's a very close match. And so we would use that same style of brick on the addition that we are proposing. I'm happy to answer any questions. Before I lose the opportunity, I want to thank the staff for its professionalism, and they were easy and pleasurable to work with, so thank you.
Great. We know that. Thank you.
Needs to be noted on the record, sir.
So the window documentation you've submitted matches the existing window, looks like on the north and west elevations, same window?
That's correct.
In dimension? Okay.
Okay. You can mention the,
I would make a motion to approve unless there's other comments.
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham, second by Neela Crank Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you approve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
The condition,
Jiminy.
the condition was the additional information and has been submitted, so you can say it's attached, but, yeah.
HPCA 18-00141 at 508 Northwest 15th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of J. Whipple by Sam Gresham of SGA PC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, and 2, construct garage elective.
Okay, is the applicant present?
Good afternoon, David Box, 504 Northwest 15th Street. I have the opportunity to be here today on behalf of the applicant, not only as his lawyer, but also as the next-door neighbor. This is an item that I think has been continued not once, but perhaps twice.
Just once.
Just once, okay. At the outset, when Mr. Whipple came and visited with me, he wanted to know what the best approach was to potentially try and save this structure. It was clear to him, and frankly anybody that's ever stepped foot or looked at it, that it has some sort of problems because the walls are pointed the wrong way. So what I suggested is that he hire an engineer to go evaluate the structure, see what problems might exist. He hired Tim Johnson of Johnson & Associates. I hope everybody's had a chance to review the report that he's got. Now, this body is used to seeing demolition permits. To me, this is one of the, at least as far as I've been involved in, one of the most, I think, data-heavy reports that I've seen. I think there are approvals that are granted routinely with far less support. So I am going to have Mr. Johnson go through his report with exhibits, but I do want to talk briefly about where your authority to grant these approvals comes from, and it's Chapter 59, and then specifically in Chapter 59, where it discusses the structure is, if the structure is a garage or other accessory building and meets at least one of the following criteria addressing the functionality and continued use of the historic structure in relation to the impact of a demolition. So there are 4 criteria then set out. The way that the ordinance reads is if one of those is met, then you may grant approval. I would submit that what the evidence will show is we meet 3 of them. Specifically, the first one, the structure is not large enough to accommodate a standard size parking space and cannot reasonably be altered to do so. This garage, as it's currently constructed, cannot fit the type of car my client drives. My client drives a Ford F-150. That is a standard car, automobile in this part of the world. It's not extended cab. It's just a normal F-150. I think he told me that when he was doing some research, that is the most sold car perhaps in the state of Oklahoma. It is both problematic in terms of width and length. He also has an SUV, that the width of the SUV would not fit in those openings. So I believe that we can meet the criteria on element 1. Number 2, the condition of the structure makes it physically impractical to rehabilitate without the loss of all or nearly all fabric contributing to its historic integrity. Mr. Johnson will get into this with more specifics, but one of the major problems this structure has is it has no foundation, it has no footing. And so there is no real way to fix this without losing almost all, if not all, of the historic structure. Then the 4th one, the structure has minimal impact upon the historic integrity of the property and district. If this is the historic building, it's at least Tim and in my opinion that most of the historic integrity of that has been lost. It's believed that the opening would not have been a double opening like this. Rather, it would have been a single opening. The door for people to enter on the right side of the screen would not have been there. When you're on the back of the property, what you notice is there are multiple previous openings that have been replaced and siding put back on. That right there. You can't see it in that picture, but if you're there, what you'd see is there have been previous holes punched in that back elevation throughout the years. It's not known why or when, but there's little left. If this is the original, there's little left of what was there. So all things considered, again, the ordinance provides that if one of the 4 are met, it is appropriate to grant the CA for demolition. I submit that we meet 3 of the 4. So at this point, I would like Mr. Johnson to come up and walk through his analysis and the various exhibits that he's got to support his conclusions.
Before Tim does that, I have one comment. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the standard parking space in our guidelines refers to the standard city code parking space, which is 9 by 18. We don't look at the predominant of cars in Oklahoma City. So I believe that's what it's based on. Is that right, Katie?
Yes, that's what was that's why it says standard size parking space. So not necessarily vehicle, but what's expected when you provide a parking space for a vehicle.
And that's fair enough.
And F-150 is about 20 feet long, I think.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is that I think what the standard is perhaps a bit skewed, especially at least in this neighborhood where you have an enormous amount of younger families with kids. I don't know that I see a lot of small standard cars where at least my wife, when she's lugging the kids around, that wouldn't cut it. So SUVs.
As far as I know, only the F-150 pickups exceed the 18 feet.
So he's got a Tahoe that won't fit either.
Okay. I just want to point that out, what it was based on.
Sure.
Okay, Tim? Ooh, visual aids. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates, here on behalf of the applicant. We were originally requested to inspect this for the general contractor that was working on the remodel of the house, and there were concerns at that time. And I'm an engineer, civil engineer, licensed in multiple states. I have licensed registered inspectors that work for me. And the original inspection on this was done by Ken Meltenbarger in my office, who's a registered inspector and has been for some 20 years, and teaches the home inspection class at OSU OKC. After he did his inspection, I went out and did a personal walkthrough myself to look at some of the issues that were pointed out in the report. Just in general, you all have the report, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to read it, but in general, it's a slab on grade, it's unreinforced. Connection from the 2x4s to the slab is not known. A lot of the walls were covered up. We didn't tear anything, didn't do any destructive inspection. We do know that in the back southeast corner, the wood is rotted out to the point that you can see light through the inside of the building. The slab is broken up into several large pieces and has shifted multiple inches. As David mentioned, we believe, looking at the original structure frame at the front of those two doors, that there was a sliding door there that probably slid to the west, and there was not those two manway doors there that there are there today, because when the doors were open you couldn't use them, and that the manway door was at the back of the house. Interior to the building is, the concern really comes from the roof and how the roof has been supported, and the bent, aged wood, which you cannot fix, cannot repair without removal. You can't make it go straight again, is really creates a lot of the problem. The concern from an engineering perspective we have is the roof loads and the way the roof is being held up. We think that it's imminent to failure, that there's enough sag in the roof, there's enough bend in the rafters, that it has caused problems with the exterior walls. And it's hard to describe without a computer model, but if you would envision putting your finger on the top of that ridge at the roof and push down, the roof is bent down and the walls have moved out. In front of the door, which in one of the slides that she went through, you can see the sag in the original door opening. It originally had a post that was removed at some point in time, we don't know when, and after that post was removed, then that structural member began to sink over a period of time, and of course it can't be corrected now. At some point in time later, we think that those roll-up doors may be as much as 10 years old. They came inside of the exterior frame. You can see the width of the frame of the door is much thicker than a standard 2x4, and that's where we get into the parking problem. So the building itself is measured 20 feet out to out. You take roughly 6 inches off the south wall, and you take roughly a foot off of this wall, and that's why the car can't fit in that space. So let me walk you through the photographs real quick. So the first page, page 1, these were pictures taken up in the attic. At some point in time, somebody had stored equipment in the attic. The spacing on the rafters is 24 inches. The original roof deck was for shake shingles. At some point in time, they removed the shakes, filled in between the old cross members that the shakes would sit on with just random wood. You can see it's painted different colors. And then the deck and the composition shingles were added at that point. We think that that additional weight has caused some of the settlement on the roof. As you go to page 2, specifically E and F, these are bent steel bars that go through the ceiling deck, which would be the floor of the attic space, up to the peak rafters and connect to the ridge. And because of any loading on the attic space floor would cause that weight to pull down on the roof. And that's where we think a lot of the damage had began to occur. On page 2, photograph H, it's hard to see in that picture, but if you stood out there, you would see the cupping on the roof on either side of the dormer. The greatest cupping is over the door that has the structural member has settled. On the third page, they're more of the roof edge and roof line. Again, in a photograph, it's hard to see. If you stand there, it is very evident. Staff was out there with us on a walkthrough, and it was evident to everyone that was there. On page 4, the bottom left-hand picture, O, you can see the ceiling rafters, or beams, I'm sorry, are on, they're 2x6s on 24-inch centers with the wooden deck on top. And at some point in time, obviously, there was loading on that with storage. They don't meet current code for the space, a 20-foot span at this point in time, and have settled and curved. And again, if you tried to jack that up, you can't jack it up. The bottom right picture, P, that's where we dug through to find out that there was no footing.
No footing.
No footing.
Okay. So I was going to ask you.
Top of page 5, that's the area I described earlier where the, picture Q, where the actual bottom of the 2x4s is missing, and you can see under the lap siding on the outside. And then the other picture, S, shows the failure of the floor. Probably the most significant is about 1.5 inch gap that somebody has over time put cement in to smooth it off. There's also a floor drain in there. It appeared that there may have been a toilet in there at one time. It doesn't show up in the picture. There's a floor drain, but there's a sink drain to the left of the floor drain, and then there's a 4-inch, what appears to be a toilet drain there. I think that this was occupied at one time. And the final page, page 6, again, it shows more of the floor failure in what appeared to be like an office space, but that's where the toilet and sink appeared to be. You can see the paper towel rack on the wall in picture V. And then in picture U, it's more of a modern attic staircase that comes down, but it's held to the ceiling rafters with rope. So because of my size, I only went up about 4 steps and kind of peeked in over there. I let my inspector do all the picture taking inside. And then W, you can see additional floor failure And then the last picture, X, again, it's hard to see, but there's probably about a 3-inch bow, maybe a 4-inch bow across the face of that. And you can kind of see that in the picture that's up in front of you. If you look at either side of both doors, you can see the trim of where the rolled-up door goes. And if you look towards the middle, you can't see the trim anymore. It's about a 3-inch settlement. So we evaluated what would it take to give me comfort to park my SUV in here. And I think it would require the entire removal of the roof system and a redo of the ceiling joists to meet code. And then by the time you do that, I'm not sure the walls would be substantial enough to withstand the removal and the loads that would be put back on to meet code. They are not perpendicular. They're not straight up and down. They're not parallel. And so our concern was for the safety of the homeowner and for his vehicles. We think that some point over time of heavy snow could drop this roof and cause it to fail. I don't think it would be a catastrophic failure. In other words, the whole roof's not going to fall at one time, but there's a weak point in there, probably the southeast corner that would fail first. And that's given based on the rotted wood, the poor drainage around the backside over many, many years. There's a slab where that trailer sits over there that is the same elevation as the floor slab, and water comes to that corner of the house. My presumption is that's how that rotted, was it just didn't have good water drainage away from the building.
Is there a solution for the footings?
No, you'd have to.
Impossible.
I mean, if you jack the place up, then you'd have to raise it up, to cut in a footing. I don't think it would withstand the stress of raising the building. There's just nothing to hold on to on the side but the siding. I mean, the siding itself, because it's nailed to every vertical 2x4, gives it a very rigid frame sense, but like many barn pictures you've seen, that siding causes a twisting action over time. I don't see any way of putting this up on steel beams to jack it up like you'd move a house. It has no structural foundation around the outside made out of timber or concrete. So I don't see how you could jack it up to put a foundation in.
What about the sill plates on the walls, the 2x4?
Most of them were covered. The ones that we saw were rotted out in that corner.
Yeah, they usually are.
And the staff did ask us to evaluate, well, how could we fix this? Could we move it out of the way, pour a new slab? I just don't think it would handle being jacked up. Even the secondary portion, which if you jacked it based on the ceiling deck, it's not strong enough to hold any weight of its own. It really is 2x6, 20-foot span on 24-inch centers. It doesn't meet anybody's code.
Okay.
Do you know what the square footage is of the existing garage without the side room by chance?
I do not. I didn't take a separate measurement. It looks
It's
like it's
600
about.
for the entire garage, right?
It looks like that where the two manway doors are. It looks like that's about 10 foot wide inside, where there's that wooden wall built.
Mm-hmm.
You can see in some of the pictures. So the garage would be 20 by 20, plus the 10 foot outside.
It's like 400 square feet maybe for the
garage
part.
Yeah.
786, okay. So we're adding it 186 feet for the
I'll let
newer.
I'll let the architect explain what they're proposing to do on that as they try to. Should we be successful in being able to remove this, they want to try to put back something that looks just like this. So, any other questions of me?
Now, as far as the structure is related, last time we heard this, the information that was provided, it seemed like something that could be rehabilitated. And, me, part of historic preservation, besides the fact that it is a historic structure, is that it's less resource intensive. to build new than it is to rehab an old structure. However, I did kind of read through your revised report, which I appreciate you guys going back and fleshing that out. And you mentioned with the cupping and the rafters, and at this point they're hardened in place. There really isn't a good way, I don't think, to fix that, especially if they're 24 on center, and maybe today you do 16 on center. So if you're already going to replace the entire roof, essentially, at that point, if there are foundation issues, or as you described, there is no foundation parts of it, or the entire garage, it seems that it almost does make sense in that case to rebuild one that will be functional and last, hopefully, a long time, since it would be built to today's kind of construction standards.
So you're saying that it is feasible to rebuild?
I'm saying I think you'd be replacing over 50% of the structure. I think you'd have to take the entire roof off, rebuild the roof based on your engineering report. And at that point, you might as well rebuild the foundation as well, since you can, see light through it. So it seems to me that it's almost not feasible to rebuild it, kind of based on the revised engineering report. Economically feasible.
You can do anything.
I think almost any building could be restored.
You can do anything you have enough money.
Right.
Yeah. Well, looking at the staff, I'd like to chime in there. The engineering report, a lot more detail than Tim's explanation. It looks like, in my opinion, it looks like it's in better condition than it really is, especially the footing. I mean, you can't do anything about that. You can come in and cut out the slab maybe and pour a new slab, but the footing, a lot of these garages are slabs sitting on nothing, sitting on dirt. Almost all garages in these neighborhoods find this. So I kind of agree it'd take a lot of work based on some of the things. And we did see one also that had the ceiling rafters hung from the roof, and I remember that was a factor in us approving demolition. So just saying that we have seen that before. Maybe it's contributing to the sagging. I'm sure it is. So
We think it is.
yeah.
Well, I think you described your engineering report that kind of everything is hung off those rafters, more or less, or the roof structure. So kind of you have that stacking effect and different loads on it. So I think fundamentally that would be something that has to be addressed, which you can't just easily address, in which case you'd have to take the roof off and shore
To
everything
address
up.
it, we'd have to assume the walls are stable enough to take the roof completely off, redo the decking for the attic space, and then build the new roof. And by then, you're down, by the time you take that roof and the attic decking off, you're down to less than 30% of the structure.
Well, and if you want to take it down to the footing, the foundation, you'd have
Then
nothing.
it's all gone.
You have nothing. You just start over. We'll build a new one. So it's unfortunate, but I can see.
This home has such historical significance, and not many garages do.
Yeah.
This was one of my personal transactions that I knew more about the house than I knew about the garage. But it does look like it is not improved any since the time that I was in the garage. It's more serious than I had envisioned. So, but I hate to see it go.
Yeah. Part of our discussion last time this came up was trying to determine actually how much of the historic fabric was actually left. And apparently some of the aged wood rafters are left, but they're ruined, if I'm hearing correctly. And I don't know what else besides just the footprint, that sort of thing, of the historic fabric is left. That's my observation.
More comments?
I will, just to speak to how much historic fabric is left, because that is something that comes up for us a lot when we talk about whether something retains historic character, historic integrity. We know that sometime between 1905 and 1922, it switched from the Sanborn maps indicate that it changed from a stable to a garage. So our assumption is that the change to the opening was made in that time frame. So even though it was not originally garage doors, that's probably been the configuration for a very long time, and we also would assume that that's within the original opening that they went and put in garage doors. We've seen other stables with a similar configuration and a similar design that are indicated as 1.5 stories that had a dormer, that had dormers like that on the front and the back. So that would lead me to believe that the dormer is perhaps original to the structure. And then, yeah, on the pedestrian door to the side, obviously that's been modified in some way, and that trim doesn't quite match the trim that's around the garage door opening, but that looks to be, and so I think in the scheme of the way that we see buildings evolve over 100+ years, this retains a lot of the original character. How much of that is the original pieces of wood that were put on the building in 1905? I don't know, but I think there's a lot of historic integrity left to that structure, whether things have been modified and replaced over time.
I'd like to make a point really quickly, too. I'm Holly Hunt with Sam Gresham Architects, and I know right now we're discussing the demolition, but again, in the theme of preservation, we want to recreate this garage almost exactly, using every bit of fabric that we can salvage. So just keep that in mind. We're not tearing this down and coming in with something completely new. It will be the inspiration for the new design, and hopefully it can be preserved in that way through a recreation.
What would you salvage?
All the windows and the pedestrian door there with the glazing in it, yes. The wood, obviously, I mean, that's trim that we can replace, but it would match identically the dimensions, the thickness. We will miter the edges of the siding, just as you see it there. So we will try to recreate its
Okay, I understand
original
recreate,
character.
it's about reuse. So I see the door, the side, the man door, we call it. Anything else being reused?
All the windows.
Windows, okay.
Yeah, and they're labeled on the existing plan and then shown on the proposed in roughly the same locations. I also place them in the same dimension from the corners that we see in the original building. So even though it seems a little haphazard, some of the placement of the windows, we'll put them back where they were in the original.
Okay, so door and windows, anything else being salvaged?
As far as salvaged materials, that's pretty much the extent of it.
Okay, just asking, because it is part of historic preservation, as Klaus said, to reuse, so.
Is a cedar being used for the addition and garage?
I don't know that we intend to paint it, so cedar or pine, it would be what we'd use. If there's a preference, I think that we would do what the staff recommends.
Yeah, just FYI, I'm working on a new project in Midtown, and I talked to my builder and found out that lumber bids now, and quotes, due to the tariffs, only last 2 weeks.
True. I've heard that as well.
So go by fast, I think.
Well, let's get an approval today, and I'll do so.
Okay, more comments? It's always difficult.
I know there was comments from the neighborhood. Was there anybody from the neighborhood that wanted to speak to this project?
Okay, anybody from the neighborhood? I didn't hear what Katie said.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Marva.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Back again.
I think the neighborhood wanted a thorough vetting of the condition of the garage to know that this was something that was not going to be able to be saved. I know North and Emily, and I know that I talked to North last night. I know their intentions are good with this, but there are concerns that the neighborhood has about the appearance and placement of that garage that we're interested in, but that might be the second phase of this. And so I think I was satisfied with Tim's explanation.
Okay, thank you.
And I just
Okay.
want to speak to that briefly, in that talked about a little bit last time, is that it is difficult for us as a commission, not engineers, to be given an engineering report and try to make a decision based on that when they are professional giving their opinion. It is difficult, and I appreciate the redo and the additional information, because I think in this case there was a lot of concern, and I feel like that I don't really see a way to save this particular.
Very informative. Okay, any more discussion? We need to approve any demolition separately if we want to, so.
Sorry. Make a motion for HPCA 1800141, item 1, to demolish the garage.
Okay.
With okay, I'm going to have to go back to my facts and find, I guess. Just a second. Let's see.
Specific.
Mary Jo, I think we could start with some that are in the staff report.
Yeah, I'm looking at them.
And if you recall, on the back of your agenda, you have a cheat sheet with the standard motion for demolition of a historic structure, if you want to use those.
Okay. I'll go there first.
I didn't know that.
Okay. With this motion, I approve with the specific finding that the proposed work will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district and property, but is necessary because of an imminent threat to public health and safety, and complies with all relevant standards and guidelines and sections of the Municipal Code 2010 as referenced in Section D of the staff report. Do I need to have specific findings in addition to that?
It's up to you. Yeah, you could reference the engineer's report if to specifically say
Okay.
as identified in the structural engineer's report.
Okay, and the specific finding of the attached engineer's report to the application.
Okay.
I'll second that. If we can add, let's see, that the structure that converted to a garage by 1922 appears to be original to the property, which this is in the staff report, item 5, the specific findings. Also that the garage is visible from the public right-of-way and appears to retain its historic integrity. And then that the structure is large enough to accommodate 2 standard-sized parking spaces. And I'll second that.
Okay. That's okay with you, Joe?
Okay. Okay, so you included specific findings. Could you just tell me those numbers?
I mentioned number 1 earlier, so number 3, number 5, number 6.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm amenable to including that in my motion.
Okay, moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Neela Frank Clements. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, item 1 has been approved. Down to item 2, construct a garage. You might want to come on up again, in case we have questions. Yeah.
I recognize that we're exceeding the square footage a little bit, and that's what I was just working on. And with the rebuild of the garage, since, as Tim was mentioning, the wall thickness will be less, if we move the rear wall in 5 foot 4 inches, that will be right at our square footage. And so I think maybe we can pull that off. That would make the dimension in the north-south 25, 10 and a half.
But be what?
Well, no, I'm sorry, I'm doing this on the fly.
I understand where you're going. You're probably going to have to submit new drawings. So are you proposing that you...
I was hoping that maybe if we could...
We could keep it at the exact, at the square footage of the existing building. I think that's...
Well, I would ask for a little larger, which would be 5% of the existing lot, which is the...
In this case, I would be amenable to the same square footage. I don't know if I'd want to increase.
Which would be 20 foot 2.5 by 30.5, around 600 some square feet, a little over 600.
That would be my thought.
That's the existing, out to
That's the
out.
existing, to keep the existing footprint.
So to get the F-150 in there, you'd have to go deeper and
Well, and I guess that's what I'm
Less
getting at. I think
wide.
we could maybe come to a compromise where, yeah, we get a little additional square footage to the rear, but that width would remain the exact same as the existing house. The roof pitches from the right-of-way would remain as they are today. Dimensions of the dormers, et cetera, would remain. But it ends up being roughly, 5 feet that we need to come in off the back wall to be within, to gain back that 106 that we're over.
5 feet. So the new dimension, if you look on your plan, would be 21 foot 2.5 inches?
No, I'm doing this wrong. I'm sorry. Don't quote me on that. Let's see. If we... Can I grab my pen? The width. So if we've got 106 divided by 30, no, 106 divided by 30 feet, that's the width. So we would need to bring that back wall in 3.5 feet. I'm sorry, I said wrong dimension.
3.5. So now
3.5 feet. So then we'd be at, 24.8-ish. I can do that math really quickly. But in other words, I think we could work to stay within the 5% of the lot, which is the guideline, which, yes, is a little additional square foot than the existing, but it would be approved as an addition.
What's the
as long as
5%
I see
number
that.
that Holly's talking about?
The guidelines say that a new garage can, the kind of baseline allowed size for a new garage is either 450 square feet or 5% of the lot, the area of the lot, whichever of the two is larger.
Okay,
So it's a very large lot, so the 5% of the lot is much more than 450, and it's slightly larger than the existing garage. So they were hoping to use that 5% number.
Do you know what that
to go
number
back at
is?
that size.
Do our guidelines say anything about matching the existing?
It
footprint,
talks
if we know what
about
that is? What
approximating
guideline is that?
the historic, all the characteristics of the historic garage. But
Okay.
that approximate does allow a little
Okay.
wiggle room on the size. And I think that was the intent of that guideline, setting a baseline for the square footage that we know. Obviously, this is already a generously sized garage, but we know sometimes people want to go back a little larger.
680 would be 5% of the lot.
680.
Just so you
That's what I
know.
was asking. Okay.
Correct.
So 680 divided by 30 is,
But you proposed 786.
Right, and so
That was
I
over.
misunderstood, when Katie and I met, I misunderstood how that number, we got that number. I was thinking in addition to what was existing. So I thought we were well under that.
so 680.
But I think I can-
680, 30 feet wide is about 23 feet deep. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Round it off.
Yeah, I was just doing the math here. It's
A little less than 23, but what they're doing is replicating the width of the historic garage, so that
that facade.
is somewhat replicating.
Holly, we talked on the site visit about some other changes to the front, the massing of the front elevation, the doors and such. I don't know if we didn't get any additional documentation on that.
I'd like to move forward with the front facade as proposed. Yeah, it's slightly different than the existing facade, but again, it's for that practicality, and if we're moving to make this a modern, functioning garage, this is really what the homeowner would like for it to be configured, so that both he and his wife are able to park their cars in, open doors, and get out.
It's hard to have it both ways if you're going to replicate, but you're going to make it different.
Sure.
We need to find some kind
Similar
of
but
common
different.
ground there.
Sure. I'm willing to, work with you all and staff to find out exactly what that is.
I think the one thing that staff is talking about is the extra wall between the two doors. And right now you've got posts, which is
Correct.
not sufficient, but I think they're reacting to maybe I stood that that doesn't, originally there was probably one opening there or something, I don't know what it was, that maybe some sliding doors, carriage doors, but That's what they're talking about, I think, more than anything, is the wall between the dormers.
Well, yeah, and we've seen this on a couple, the handful of other carriage houses that have this same form, where it's a wide and shallow structure with the carriage or car doors off to one side, a pedestrian door to the other side, the dormer in the center. We've seen one or two others like this, and so just the proportion of that front, keeping some of that rhythm where the door is centered under the dormer off to the side instead of,
Right.
such...
I would make the point that the pedestrian door and the door to the east, those remain in roughly the same location. It's that center single door that we're just sliding over slightly in order to make it more functionable.
Is there desire on the second floor to make that like a livable space? It's
No,
not,
sir.
it's just more
No.
storage type. We just see a dormer and
Right, and you can see in the floor plan, the existing, there was a wall that separated the garage from the servants' quarters, and they don't need the servants' quarters. Storage would be great, and having a pedestrian door there and recreating it to look as it does is all great, but no, having some livable suite out there isn't desired by the homeowners. They'd rather have that space to park their cars.
it just seems like the garage doors could maybe be a little wider if you didn't.
Yeah. Oh, and I would make a point to that effect.
Would you consider...
The staff report mentions...
Would you consider a single door, like 20 feet wide?
Katie and I discussed that, and I could certainly take that to the homeowners. I think their thinking was that 2 single doors was more appropriate to what we see today.
Normally, we would prefer that.
Could a door be fabricated, a single door be fabricated to look just like the existing
Like as a
doors?
center.
Well,
Yeah, to have
the
that
existing
center.
2 doors are so close together
Right.
that it really almost doesn't read like 2 doors
And it's 'cause-
anyway right now.
And the
That-
trim
that
is
center post
continuous.
is so...
The trim's continuous, too, so
Yeah.
it's one opening.
And in the staff report, it mentions that the existing doors are 7 feet wide. They're actually 8 feet wide. So we're only increasing them by a foot.
8 feet wide.
So, but if
So
it's
going to
a single
9-foot
double,
doors.
as if single is acceptable, the 2 single doors is, I just feel, more historically accurate. But if the staff, if the commissioners feel like a double door that's made to look like 2 singles is more appropriate for this facade, then I think we can get there.
Back to Neela's comment, you can use overlays in the door, whatever, to make it look like 2 single doors.
Yes, and we've done that
So,
in the past, not this.
I think I'd like to see that. I think the proportion of the 2 doors as in the proposed elevation just seems a little off. So that's something I would entertain.
I agree. I think from the existing, the dormer is kind of centered over that center door, and it kind of adds a little bit of, order to it, even though it is off balance. And the proposed elevation, there's really no,
yeah,
it just kind of feels unordered somehow. So, it's kind of funny you mentioned the single door. I was kind of almost thinking the same. The original does read like a full door, and I wonder if that could be a compromise where, if you had one large door, it might be, easier to maneuver than the 2 individual ones, but maybe you could keep the one edge. What side would that be?
The east?
Yeah, maybe even with the edge of the dormer or something, then it would kind of read,
a
little clear. But
what was that? I didn't follow.
keep the edge of the, if you look at the existing north elevation, where that edge of the dormer kind of comes down at the edge almost of that middle garage door.
Yeah.
So if you basically imagine the same facade with one big double door, that kind of maintains that same.
And the door would go to the left, what the right side would line up.
Correct. Yeah, it would line up kind of. So I think maybe that would.
Don't know if that'd work on their dimensions of their new garage, but.
So actually, it looks like your dormer might be. Is it smaller than the original, or is it just that the roof is higher? I think.
The roof shouldn't be any higher, although
so I think it'd be a little bit higher.
What it is, and order to get a little bit more depth on the building, what I've done is slightly change the pitch on the north and south so that from the front, the pitch matches the existing, but from the side. So anyway, you just get a little longer roof on the dormer. No, this would be completely imperceptible by anyone but the birds, but.
Because I almost wouldn't be opposed if, the dormer was, on the existing, the dormer ridge goes all the way to the back of the roof ridge. I wouldn't be opposed necessarily if the dormer became a little bit larger almost, or a little bit wider. And then it would be easier to maybe line up that one edge of the door, if it wasn't.
We're not supposed to redesign it completely.
I'm trying to match as many details as I can while providing them with a functional design. So this, we can push and pull a little bit more, but keeping the dormer the same size to me is one of the most defining features of the structure. So that was, for us, a must-have.
I just want to say, I think we're already way beyond staff's comfort level with things to be submitted to staff for the CA.
So we're going to continue.
You want to continue it?
Yeah, I think there's lots of good guidance here if we continue to the November 7th meeting.
There'd also be the location.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
probably
let's
good to give
discuss that.
feedback on the moving or not moving the garage.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, I see that as a way to compromise by keeping the current location. By keeping the current location would be another way, since it's going to be an all-new structure, to keep that, those original sight lines and so forth. So.
Anyone else? It's just, they'd like to get back some of their backyard, plus there's nothing in the zoning ordinance that, we would keep a 5-foot side yard setback, which is actually 2 feet more than the zoning ordinance calls for accessory structures. So really, we just feel and ideally, if the structure could have held up to pick it up and move it, that would have been all we did, was just move the structure over in order to get back that. But then we went down this rabbit hole and discovered that the structure wouldn't withstand that. So in the recreation, it would just be ideal for us to do that. I would mention, you can see the structure from the right-of-way pretty clearly today, and you would still be able to see it just as clear if it was slid over. Yeah, it's not the exact same sight lines, but I feel like the view is the same as you go down the street or on the sidewalk, along the sidewalk.
Well, the new garage isn't the same footprint, so it's going to have to be shifted one way or the other.
The width is...
It's not the same footprint exactly, so it's going to have to be... The width is the same.
The width is the same.
Yeah, so you're thinking same width,
that was just my thought.
same east-west, and then maybe go back or something like that.
I don't know. Suzanne?
Yeah, I have the same concern, and I expressed it at the last meeting. And as I look at the pictures, where the garage sits, it's a part of that whole functioning lot and house and how they work together. And I do think moving them over, moving the garage over closer to the property line is going to be a significant difference in the way these two buildings work together.
And I would also make a point that we'd be reducing some paving back here as well. So that right now, the existing concrete is very wide because of the location of the garage. Since it's pushed in more into the center of the lot, we have concrete that extends diagonally to it. So we would actually remediate quite a bit of earth there and be able to get some green space.
You could still remove the concrete that's east of the garage pad.
Sure.
So I think what Joe's saying is the front of the garage would basically be where it is right now, and
Yes.
the length would go further back. Is that kind of it? That's what I think Suzanne agrees. That's a good compromise. Okay, so with that input, we're going to continue.
To November 7th? Okay.
Which means all the
As soon
studies
as
and everything has to be
possible.
done by next Tuesday, right?
You know I can do it, girl.
Okay, I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, moved by Neela Coin Clemens, a second by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the item 2 has been continued. Thank you.
HPCA 18-00146 at 326 Northwest 22nd Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Joy Baracel by Sophia Jans of JB Design for certificate of appropriateness to 10 remove window at rear addition elective, 11 install wood door at window location at addition elective, 12 install trim matching historic on door location elective, 11 relocate windows of southwest side of addition to the southeast side elective, 14 install trim at proposed windows at southeast side of addition elective, 17 install window at south side of addition elective, 18 install trim at south window to match historic elective, and 20 replace front porch floor with routed rather than smooth wood material required.
Okay.
Hi, Joy Barcel, I'm the owner.
Okay, great. Did you sign in too?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thought you might have missed it. Okay. All right, a number of things here.
I just addressed the things that were staff suggested to continue, and the first one was the window. Did you all find that window? Is that the...
Yeah, we had it left over from another project.
Oh, from another... Okay, I thought it was on the project, so...
Well,
I thought you found it in the garage, so I would agree with staff then
yeah.
on
Yeah.
the window.
Not from this house.
Yeah.
I
thought, well, if you found it in the garage, then maybe that's
Yeah.
the case to use it, but...
The doors were in the garage, the window we had in another property, that I was just thinking maybe it would be better to use an old window from the neighborhood in the back side of the house instead of the 1/1. But I also brought the 1/1 window we could use instead, and I have packets for everyone if you would like to prove that instead.
Okay.
The other question was, could you just speak to the porch?
Yes, so the porch, when we purchased the property, had carpet on it, and when we removed the carpet, it was kind of caving in the center. And so, and the wood on the porch was too thin to refinish, and the foundation of it was bad. And so in the pictures, and I have additional pictures of the inside if you would like to see, where the floor joists going across were not reaching the full length of the porch. And there's a portion of the wood also that had been cut for some reason and put back on, so there was no saving the wood porch as it was. And so when we went to buy replacement materials, I was looking for something that looked to be 2 inches or so wide, and I couldn't seem to find anything. The other wood that we brought to the house, I think you can see in one of the pictures in the packet where I'm actually in the crawl space looking at the foundation, is behind me. And it did not seem good enough to match the original materials, so we chose the wood material that you see, that we were going to paint it as well as it was painted before.
Generally, beadboard's not used on a floor.
Okay. We're happy to use regular
I mean,
planks.
that would be, I mean, I would,
Yeah.
it seems like there would be problems ensue. I mean, it has a groove in it for like dirt or whatever. It's,
Okay.
so were you all ready to, are you in agreement that you will replace the wood on the?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'm in agreement to do that.
And you brought the window? I mean, I would make a motion on those with conditions, unless there's anything else.
Was that?
I would make a motion with conditions on those two, unless there was any more comment.
Any more comments?
No, I agree with you.
Okay, anybody else? All right.
So I would make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00146, items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, 8, and 20, with the condition that a new window be submitted to staff for staff approval for item 8, and that flooring material be submitted to staff for staff approval for item 20.
Okay.
May I do 2-inch wood planks in replacing that? And is it appropriate that you might approve the window that I submitted? Or do I have to wait until then? Okay.
I mean, that one you've already, if they see it and approve it, then the window would be okay. The floor, you'll just have to present the material to staff.
Yeah, so the certificate of appropriateness won't be effective for 10 business days anyway, and we'll take the time to look at your window and to look at your flooring and make sure that everything meets the guidelines.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham, second by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Been approved. Thank you. And this was information supporting, yeah.
HPCA 18-00153 at 126 Northwest
These are the two that go
19th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Daniel Ojeda for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish existing garage required, 2, replace and widen driveway and install parking pad, elective, 3, replace front walkway and stairs, elective, and 4, remove sidewalk at edge of front porch, elective. And I'll just note that the following item, HPCA 18-00154, is for essentially exactly the same thing. This is a shared garage that was on both of the properties that they're applying for the demolition of the structure. It has already occurred at this point.
Well, you the applicant?
Yes, Danny Ojeda, 126 Northwest 19th.
Okay. All right.
And I guess I'll start with just kind of a brief overview. So both Sean and I have owned the house a little over a year, and since we've moved in, neither of us have been able to use the driveway or the garage. It's just very steep, it's crumbling, it's narrow. There's not enough space in the back to park more than 2 cars if you can get back there. The garage in question was in a very bad state. It was leaning over, it was rotting. The storms we had this summer made it worse, and it was almost just about to fall over. So I hired a contractor, give us an opinion, which I have right here. He didn't think it could be saved. I also tried to file an insurance claim, and they would not insure the garage. So we made the decision that it's just completely unrepairable. And so once we hired the contractor, we assumed that he had pulled the permit, and he tore it down within 30 minutes because it was already leaning over. So that's kind of the brief overview. So what we want to do is come back and widen the driveway, go ahead and pour the pad for a new garage, which we will build in the future.
You have any photographs or anything showing the
I do have.
garage?
Yeah, I have one here that I can share with you.
Okay, could you pass that around? Maybe the contractor's letter, too.
There was some in my submission of the existing garage.
Oh, yeah. He has.
Yes, there are some in your staff report that were from,
Okay, from the neighbor. Okay. I don't see any in here.
page 9 and 10 of 10, in the
Okay.
staff report attachments.
Okay, there it is, yeah. Missed that. Well, that is leaning.
And it was really a safety concern. Sean has a 5-year-old son that plays in the backyard. I have a 3- and 6-year-old niece and nephew that come over a lot, and there was nails. It was rotting. I mean, the foundation would wash out every time it rained.
And there's a couple in the back of the staff report.
Did your contractor discuss with you a permit?
I'm sorry?
Did your contractor discuss with you about getting a permit?
We assumed he had one, and he did not.
Because he would have been
so-
denied a permit if he would have gone and gotten one, and then you would have had to get your application. So, because
Extra copies here.
this is the first time that we've ever had somebody just go tear down something in a historic district without an application for a certificate.
Well, it was,
And I understand what you're saying, but, you know, I think that's, it's an issue here. It's not,
and, you know,
I don't really know what to do about it.
kind of in my opinion, like, I and my insurance company will agree with me, but I didn't really, it wasn't even a garage. Like, you couldn't fit cars in it, one, and two, it was just completely dilapidated. In my opinion, we paid somebody to haul off a pile of boards rather than
We understand
demolish
that, but that's,
the garage.
it doesn't follow the guidelines of the historic district. You have to have an application before you tear down accessory buildings, whether you call it a garage or a storage unit.
It looks to me like it would have been approved, but that's the...
Yeah, and I apologize for that.
And as Joe said, if they applied for a building permit, he would have found that out.
The other is, you know, item 2 is replace and widen the driveway and install a parking pad. Well, we don't generally approve parking pads. I mean...
The intention would be to build, come back with a new garage.
Right.
Well, if you're going to build a new garage in the future, then you would have,
Right.
then you would have footings and foundation, not just a pad.
Right.
Yeah, otherwise, you'd be like some of these other garages.
We were going to do reinforced concrete.
But you'd need a footing, too, not just a, you need to design it as a foundation for a garage, not just a pad.
No, I understand that. We were thinking about maybe coming in with stem walls or maybe just reinforcing the concrete.
Yeah, and all that...
We weren't just going to pour it.
And all that would have to be approved before we could approve any sort of pad. We have to see the design, we have to see it, so. So it's not just a pad, is what we're saying.
I mean, staff has recommended a continuance to demolish the garage, I think to give you more time to provide more information. I don't know if you have any more information, but I would be inclined to deny the demolishment of the garage.
Demolition.
Right.
How do we move
coffee.
forward then if you deny?
Right, you would have to go through the process with code enforcement, and I'm not exactly sure. Maybe Katie can expand on that a little bit, or our attorney.
So if you, you could appeal that decision then to the Board of Adjustment, and then the Board of Adjustment would hear your case, and then if you wanted to, you could appeal it to district court from there.
And
I
I
think
think the other route is if you don't appeal, then it would just move forward through the citation process with the code enforcement officer like any other citation.
We also have a neighborhood representative wants to speak. Probably to the demolition.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. Most of you know about a year ago, Heritage Hills and Heritage Hills East merged, and this is one of the reasons that we merged was to protect our housing stock. I cannot really tell you how upset many people in the neighborhood are about this demolition. I think both applicants knew they lived in a or owned property in a historic neighborhood, and they knew there was a process. If they want to enjoy our property values, then they need to be willing to go through the process to live in the neighborhood, and we're not opposed to looking at a garage. We're not opposed to a lot of things, except we do want the postal walks to stay. Those are those funny little sidewalks in front of houses, but we can talk about that another day. But we have two cases today, both in Heritage, well, three, both in Heritage Hills where homeowners did a large amount of work without CAs, and some in violation of zoning inspectors asking that work to stop. And so I think we feel a little violated this time around that the system is not working for us or not working for any other historic neighborhood. I don't want to pick on Danny because I know Danny and I like Danny, but this situation has got to have a better resolution, and a parking pad is not the resolution. So I think the neighborhood would like to see the applicants agree to a continuance and come back with a design for a parking structure.
Okay. We're in agreement about the process. It's unfortunate. Happens too often. Okay. Any more comments on, I guess we need to finalize the demolition
So we are
first.
talking about a shared driveway and a shared garage. Is that the?
What's that?
A shared driveway and a shared garage. Is that what I'm saying?
Well,
What existed was a shared garage. Now, I actually had mentioned to the applicants that it may be rather challenging to get a building permit to put back a shared garage, because now in HP, they may say you're rebuilding existing an existing nonconformance, but just typically they don't approve new structures like that. So, but that's just kind of a down the road investigation to see what the approval process is for the rest of the way.
you could do two garages just abut each other.
Yeah.
There's no setback
I mean,
requirement.
I think under code, that's essentially what you would end up with,
Yeah.
two
With firewall.
virtually freestanding structures that are just right against each other.
Yep. But we need to talk about the demolition, deal with that first. What do we do?
Yeah, so one thing that I will say that we've talked about many times before when we review demolition is that we really don't have an ability to force an applicant to build something back, and we are charged with reviewing demolition on its own merits or lack thereof. Just as we wouldn't want to approve the demolition of a structure because we really like what someone's proposing to put back, we also don't want to refuse to approve something because they haven't proposed to put something back. The demolition has to stand on its own 2 feet and be considered that way. And then what goes back in its place is obviously the commission's role to evaluate and decide as well, but they have to be 2 separate items.
And if we move to deny the demolition of the garage, that does not affect whether or not the applicant can build something back. That would be a new application to come to us to consider, right?
My interpretation is if they have not yet gotten a certificate of appropriateness to remove a structure, I don't really know how the commission could then turn around and approve new construction in its place. I mean, we could certainly approve replacing the driveway, replacing the sidewalks, but I don't know how you can approve a new garage to replace a garage that you haven't yet approved the demolition of.
And you said that was your intention to eventually add a garage structure? So maybe denying it today would not, if they have a continuance, I think maybe that would be a better option to maybe explore that, do you think?
I mean, I think if we, back up and look at it like it was there, and we were looking at it today, and somebody wanted to demolish the garages, replace and widen the driveway, and install a parking pad, I think some of the comments that have already been made in regards to, is that a parking pad or is that a foundation for a garage? I would rather see, I would be hesitant to approve a parking pad, but if they wanted to turn in a design for a garage so that they could build the foundation for the garage, but it seems like if we allow a parking pad, then that's just going to always be a parking pad, no intent, unless we see which we can allow that, but we would need a design and drawings to approve that parking pad that you were going to build is sufficient to build a garage on. So not that we would deny it, but we would need that documentation.
Okay.
to approve that.
And one question too, so, just for budgeting purposes, the plan was have a parking pad now, but then build a garage. How long do you have to build the garage once you get approved?
Certificate of appropriateness is good for a year, and if you've made forward progress towards completing that work, then you can get a 6-month extension. You can get another extension on top of that.
I'm not suggesting that you have to build the garage. I'm just saying if you told us that the parking pad was going to serve as the foundation of the garage. I'm just saying that if you turn in a proposed design and that we see the structural, that we see that the parking pad part of it that's going to be the garage is sufficient for a garage, that might be more approvable than just saying a parking pad, because once you pave it and then you want to build a garage and you have to take that up. So y'all have said you're going to do it the right way, so we just would need more information on the structural, or however you call it, the structure of the parking pad. That would be my idea on that one.
Okay.
Do you feel, Mary Jo, maybe that since they would essentially be building a foundation for a future garage, if they were going to pour it as a parking pad now, would it make sense to see kind of a proposed design?
I mean, they could propose a design. They could come back with a different design later if the parking pad was the correct footprint size. I mean, they could have a, as long as it was the correct, the 450. If you had, I mean, it would seem like perhaps 2 450 square foot parking pads that were adequate to build garages on were proposed. To me, that's some kind of a compromise here versus getting in a situation where later somebody says, well, we looked into it and the parking pad really won't hold a garage, So if you don't do that, then my proposal would be you just get a driveway. You have to stop at a certain point.
I agree.
As far as the aesthetics of the garage, I don't know if there's any pictures of it, if you can see the existing garage. I don't know if we can cut to those at all.
Yeah, we've got that photograph.
But would we have to stay within those, having that sliding door? Like on our side of the house, we had a sliding door. Okay. And could we add maybe a sloped roof? Because how it was before, it was just a flat roof.
I think a lot of designs would be acceptable as long as they were similar to your house and or your neighborhood or adjacent garages.
And you would work with staff on that?
Yeah, you'd have to work with them.
Yeah.
So you could come with a sketch of what you think you would like.
Okay.
Approve. Does this make sense? I don't know what else to do on this one.
Yeah,
other than I don't think we should allow a parking pad that we just need to know the parking pad is actually going to be convertible to a garage.
I understand
and I can see your.
Yeah, we're not. I apologize about all this confusion. We were not trying to pull one over or anything like that. It was just kind of we hired a family friend. He told us that we didn't need a permit, and sure enough, we did. So.
Right.
We're not trying to pull a fast one by any means. We want to do it by the book and do it right. I mean, this is our investment.
Were you aware when you all purchased that this was a historic preservation zoned area?
I was aware, yes. That's why I hired a contractor, just so I could kind of go through him and not have to deal with the back and forth. I wasn't familiar with the certificate of appropriateness.
Did you have a realtor representing you, or did you buy from the owner's agent or from the owner?
We had a realtor, and she made us aware of that it had been adopted into Heritage Hills when we purchased it. So.
Okay, so we're going to continue this?
I would like to continue the whole thing and have you all come back.
December?
I mean, I don't think there's any emergency at this point.
No, yeah, there's no.
You've got a parking pad right now.
Yeah, I wish I could use it. My car, I can't pull it the driveway.
Okay, I would make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00153 to the...
So probably to the December meeting.
December meeting.
So you have time to work on the garage and all that.
And I know this is kind of not really relevant, but those plans that we do suggest, can we redevelop those as kind of it gets closer to the actual construction? Okay. I didn't know.
Some things, a lot of things can be amended With staff, we do administrative amendments
Okay.
to previously approved CAs. If it's too significant of a change, then we will bring it back to the commission, but you don't have to submit a whole new application.
There's only so many changes you can make to a 450 square
No,
foot.
that's true. You'd be surprised, though.
Yeah.
Architects
Well,
are creative.
that's true. We're
Yeah.
surprised everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I make a request that you make the text bigger on your drawings?
Yeah.
You can't read it.
Do I?
Make your text bigger. Are we just reviewing the one, the first one,
no,
and do
the
the
next
second
one.
one?
Oh, so we need to make a motion and vote on the first one, and then
Okay.
do the same thing for the second application.
So I second Joe's motion, but I don't think I got the date in December. What was that?
December 3rd?
3rd? Okay. I second that motion then.
Okay. Moved by second, it's been moved by Joe Meacham, second by Neela Crane Clement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 5 is continued.
It's December 5th. Well, the governor's error, it's fine.
It's continued to December 5th. Okay. All right. And now on to the next one. Probably the same motion.
HPCA 18-00154 at 122 Northwest 19th Street. We won't repeat everything again.
Yeah, that's my house, so that's kind of why. I
Based
jumped.
on the fact that these two properties have a similar situation, I would go ahead and make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00154 to the December 3rd meeting.
Second.
Okay, moved by Joe Meacham, and second by Neela Craig Clements. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that one's continued.
Thank you,
Also,
Council.
thank you. December 5th.
December 5th.
All right, next.
HPCA 18-00155 at 609 Northwest 38th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Allison Thomas, Allison Leffler by Andrew Thomas for certificate of appropriateness to 1 construct addition elective.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay.
Hello, my name is Andrew Thomas. I'm the architect on the project for Allison Leffler.
Okay. Would you also sign in to?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any questions on this?
So staff, I think, has received clarity on the soffit material and drawings that fully define that. Is that right, Katie?
Yes, I believe so. That clarified that we have, I think, 2 different soffit types, so that was why there was some confusion about that documentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thomas, could you address a specific finding that staff has in the staff report? The addition does not appear to be compatible in design or to complement the design of the primary structure due to the massing of the addition asymmetrically beneath the gable end.
Yes. Well, for one thing, I don't know if you have the drawings in front of you or not, but
We do.
what we were trying to do was simply add on a powder bath and a laundry room combination, and extending that gable on the back of the house for the addition. What we did was purposely bump the addition over about 1.5 feet so that we could establish that it was in fact an addition and not part of the original construction. And that was really the major motivating factor behind that. The other was, by moving that over that 1.5 feet or so, it does increase our angle for being able to get in the backyard, into the driveway on the drive with the car, because as you're turning there, since we're extending the gable out, it makes it a little bit more of a sharp turn. So if we could save a little bit and push that wall over, I felt that it was a good solution. We've used that in the past to help signify an addition, not just to change the material, but to actually move the wall.
So the gable pitch and location is just being extended out from the
Exactly.
existing?
Exactly. So we would take that exact gable roof and simply extend it out. The new addition would be moved over 1 foot or so, 1.5 feet. So it
see
would,
now.
the exterior wall there would go up a little bit further to meet the underside of the rafter, and that would be where that soffit would be. And that would be the only thing. So we'd have a little bit more of an extension of that overhang on that side, but the roof line itself would be identical.
Okay solution.
Okay.
So the addition is wood siding? Or?
Yes, wood siding addition.
Maybe I'm the only one, but wouldn't that seem to look better if it was all wood instead of using the existing brick and wood?
Well, the existing is existing.
That's already there, that little brick portion.
I know.
And so they're just adding on wood siding. At first, I looked at it and I thought, it doesn't seem appropriate, but now I see the setbacks and I understand a little bit more.
I mean, the guidelines say you can have a distinctly different material. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have just a offset. Sometimes we have a thing. I mean, sometimes additions like this were wood, so I don't have a problem with it.
Yep.
Looks odd to me.
Wood siding is present on the gables of the house.
What is that? What is on the back?
That is a large manufactured siding panel.
Which is hiding a what?
I have no idea.
Was it a-
That was probably a picture window of some sort, or some sort. I mean, it looks to me like it was at one point maybe a
So odd.
doorway,
On the drawing, I
French
thought, well,
door or something. I don't
maybe it was a garage that you drove around. I don't know.
Right at first glance, it looks like a garage door or a garage door opening, but I have no idea.
Okay.
But it's solid. It's solid, like a stamped hardy board.
It looks like the opening's been modified. You can see the brick, the mortar.
Well, was that, yeah?
You know, now that I think about it, it could have been even a box window or a
Could have,
canopy or something.
like a bay window, or
Bay
it could
window
have
that's
been
built in.
doors. Maybe they have a closet on the other side. Doesn't look like it was turned in for a certificate, but it looks older.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder, under the recommended requested documentation, item 3, what exactly do you need? It says dimension of siding reveal or exposure that is reflected in the 2-scale drawings. Is it not listed in the 2-scale drawing?
The reveal.
I'm sorry, Neela, could you say that again?
Could you explain what you need on item 3 of the recommended requested documentation?
And what
do you need from the applicant?
I don't have that staff report.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so it says...
So am I.
It says dimension of siding reveal or exposure that is reflected in the 2-scale drawings. I just want to make sure he's clear on what you need from him.
That would be a profile, just a profile of your proposed siding is all.
Oh.
And the dimension that goes with that.
But the soffit material has been...
Yes, that's been received. And
that's been received.
They felt that it was okay?
So he could provide 3 to the staff
Yes, I think we can, yes.
without having to continue. What's on the drawings? I noticed the note that says no casing present on existing. What does that note refer to?
Well, no, there was no trim on any of these windows. They're actually inset into the brick
Yeah.
mold.
So why is that noted in a bubble, in a cloud?
Well, I think on one of the pictures we showed it on there, and when I met with Angela, we just thought we
point that out.
wanted to note that on there that there wasn't
Okay.
present.
Sometimes when we have drawings, even of the existing portion of the structure that is not proposed to be altered, if there are things that are shown on that existing structure that are not accurate, sometimes we'll call those out just so that there's not confusion when they go to get building permits.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
For the final inspection and that sort of thing.
Okay. Do we have enough?
I'll make a motion then, unless there's any other comment. Okay. Would like to move to approve HPCA 18-00155, item 1, to construct addition. And I would like to include the following specific findings in the staff report. Number 1, 2, 3, 5 and 7, and make sure the applicant provides dimensions of siding reveal or exposure as reflected in the 2 scale drawings before the CA can be released.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Neela Crank-Clemens, a second by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
HPCA 18-00157 at 1612 Classen Drive, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of David Darby, 1612 North Classen LLC by Sam Gresham of Sam Gresham Architecture for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish existing addition required, 2, construct addition elective, and 3, rehab existing garage and construct addition elective. A little bit of background on this. The commission approved the renovation of an existing addition on this structure a little over a year ago, and it had in starting work towards that renovation, the property owner ended up actually essentially demolishing the addition. Their CA was also about to expire. They came in and met with staff, and we said, you're going to need a new certificate of appropriateness to construct a new addition on the back of the structure instead of just do a renovation, and you'll need a new one anyway because it's about to expire. So they now have a new proposal submitted to redo that, and you do have comments from the Neighborhood Review Committee about this application as well.
Okay, the applicant is present.
Hello.
Doesn't Sam like us anymore? We'd like to see you too.
He's too busy to see his family, much less you guys. No, I'm just kidding.
What was demolished?
So the addition, if you could go back to it, Paula, we're standing in the driveway looking back at the garage.
The whole thing is
when the addition was still there. This is, oh, I'm sorry.
So it's already been done?
We're almost there. Yeah, right there. Yeah, this was what was existing. And sorry, I'm kind of just coming into this because Sam worked with the previous owner on the CA, and that was before I was at his firm. So I was unfamiliar with that portion of the project. So when I got involved, this, yes, had already been demolished. And I think that there was some miscommunication upon the sale of the home on what that CA was for.
Just a second. So are you saying, Katie, that the original application we approved was with a previous owner? So we switched owners?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So that is...
New application, new owner.
New owner, okay.
And demolition's already been done without a CA.
Which owner did the demolition?
The current owners. But again, I think there was just some miscommunication about what that was. I think that they were thinking, we could tear it down and then build it back. Like, I don't think that they understood what that rehab really was, in other words, because it looked, even the proposed design that was in the previous CA looked very different than what they saw when they purchased the property. So I just think it was a little confusing with that property change, with the ownership change.
There are
very many apologies.
There are drawings, there's floor plans and elevations of the previously existing addition at the very back of the staff report.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it connected, it went all the way back and attached to the garage.
Right.
And even though even when Sam worked on this, he worked with the previous owners, they really wanted to keep all that square footage because this addition included the garage, and so it made for a really large home. And even though Sam recognized that it was very non-historic and didn't suit the structure, he did his best to come up with a proposed design that you all approved, keeping it in that exact same footprint. But as you can tell, it does nothing for the house, or did nothing for the house. So we're hoping to get a little closer, restoring the property, restoring the garage back to an actual garage and servants' quarters, with a more modest addition on the rear that we feel suits the style of the architecture of the existing structure.
It's basically a master suite.
We are also adding a room, well, at that second story, that gets filled in with another bedroom as well in the second story. But again, it would have just been above the footprint of the old existing approved footprint. But I've included that number in that second story in my total addition number. So the square footage is a little confusing, and I appreciate Angela outlining, making some notes here on the drawings, because in overall, I did some math too. Overall, this proposal with the addition is over 300 square feet less than the previous house square footage. So we've actually reduced quite significantly the size of the home. But in doing so, we feel like we've restored its character. And the house is in quite a bit of disrepair, and so while the items are valid about maybe some of the CA issues not being fully addressed prior to the work, the house was just falling apart. So as soon as they purchased the property, they got to work on what we would consider maintenance and repair of the plastering. Several of the front elements had broken away, some of the little wing walls. So it was quite a nice. Oh, Paula, if I may, this is what we are modeling our proposed garage door after upon the demolition, which if one good thing could come from the demo of that addition, non-historic addition, is that we found this piece of an old door. So we've used that to model our proposal for a new garage door.
Another demolition without a CA.
Well, and this one appears to be even continued, if the neighborhood has the correct information, that it appeared to have proceeded after a city inspector had issued a citation and required it to stop.
I really can't speak to that. I don't have that information. I don't know that that's accurate. The maintenance and repair, in other words, was going on. However, nothing new, nothing proposed today has been begun. None of this proposal.
Well, you came in late to the project. I wonder if we could hear from the owner about what happened, how that came about to be demolished, or maybe...
First of all, I'd like to apologize that did happen.
You need to sign in too. What's your name?
Chris Clausen,
Okay.
one of the partners of the 1612 North Clausen LLC.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, there was some confusion, and part of that, and I think if we looked at the plans from the previous owner that the architect created, that the renovation of the addition that was already there actually moved over about 4 feet from where it sat. So as we looked at that with our contractor, the conclusion was it was approved to move over. The only way to move over is to tear it down, pour new footings, and rebuild it. So it only made sense to us that that was what was approved to do. And admittedly, none of us really have the experience in HP to make that call, and probably should have had some consultation on that.
But a building permit should have been obtained, and it wasn't.
It didn't appear to us that it was. I don't believe that it was.
A building permit had not been obtained.
Right. I believe that what was approved did not match the existing building.
That's a CA, though. A building permit's different.
Right.
To get to do a demolition, you need a building permit, and that would have told you, if it had been approved with a CA, Was that, did you
Well,
try-
no, they might have been able to get a building permit because
Think so?
there was an approved CA.
For something?
They had it from the
Huh.
previous owner.
Did you have a building permit already?
Yes.
Okay.
There
I
was a
think-
building permit, okay.
But I think the building permit had been signed off on a very long time ago.
And it was for a different project.
It was for what we originally approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which didn't include demolition, but you assumed it did.
Okay, there was also some other items that are missing that the neighborhood wrote about. Do you have a copy of the comments from the Historic Preservation Review Committee from Heritage Hills?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that's the addition. It also speaks to a tile roof, sidewalks, and stairs. Were those also included in the demolition?
Well, of course, we started under the previous CA, right? And a lot of the brickwork that is supporting the stucco on the front side of that building has no footing underneath it. And a lot of it was falling off, right, including all around, all those little, I don't know what the term is, but where it
Swing
swoops
walls.
down in the columns, those were separating from the building at all parts, and the front, underneath that front window was coming off, and around the front porch was coming off. In order to stop that from continuing on up the building, we dug down and poured new footings and new brickwork up to support that stucco, just so we could stop it from falling off the building at that point. And that involved all of that front porch area and around the front of the building.
You know, part of the previous CA did cover some of these items that she's saying weren't covered, like the tile roof. It wasn't just removed, it was replaced with an approved shingle that was in part of the previous CA. So I think even though there's some overlap, we've decided to include everything today so that their CA could stand on its own for all the work. But I wouldn't just say that they were looking at a piece of paper and saying, okay, well, we can put this tile, we can replace this broken tile with this approved material now. We're already covered with the CA to do so. And so, again, I think today's real goal should be that we can have all the scope of work outlined, which we've tried to do. But I don't think none of that was done intentionally.
Do you think
without
their previous work was intended to be in keeping with the previous CA?
Correct.
And
so I don't think they realized that just because it was that old CA expired, and so that didn't allow them to do that work.
What triggered the new application then, if they thought that everything was covered?
When did you guys decide to give Sam a call back? It was- Okay. So some neighbors had called, and I know that there's been a lot of heat from the
And
neighborhood
of
on this
course, you
property.
changed the design, too. So I
And
think we
I
have a...
believe a zoning inspector made a little
Stop
stop.
work.
Yeah.
Perhaps upon the demolition,
That would
that
get-
was discovered that was going on without the proper,
I think we have somebody from the neighborhood that wanted
Sure.
to speak to this also.
If I would have known I was going to have so much quality time with you all today, we should have probably had cookies or snacks or something. It was just a bad day for Heritage Hills on this agenda today. And I just don't think there can be such a thing as an approved roof on a CA that already expired. I mean, to me, that's like, we got to start over. The only thing that got their attention was when somebody came out and wrote them a ticket. And so then they remembered where Katie's office was. And so if you're going to do business in our neighborhoods, then you need to be competent to do business in our neighborhoods. And I'm glad that they've sought professional advice with Holly and Sam, and I think they'll get a good product, although we have some comments on the addition. But I think we would have thrown them a party for tearing that addition down if they would have done it the right way. you've got to know the system if you're going to play in the sandbox. And so people can be sorry, they can be sad, they can be upset that we don't want them to do certain things, but when you break the rules, there should be consequences, and there are not enough consequences.
I agree with you there.
This deal about a zoning inspector goes out and says stop, but they don't stop, but by the time the building inspector comes out, the addition is gone. So there's too many steps in that process. That is true, Laura. A zoning inspector cannot stop work. And so we've got to change that. I don't think they had bad intentions. I think they're just trying to get their project done, but there is the right way to do it. And so we've got to work together, and now's not the time to get in a lot of depth about it, but we've got to give some of these inspectors the ability to shut something down. It's not like changing out a front door, putting in the wrong window, which we can go back and have those things fixed, but when something is demolished, we never get that opportunity back. It's painful, although there was no love lost on that addition, but it's the whole process. And so it happened to the house that was next door to where we lived. The insurance company didn't want that house, so they had a friend with a bulldozer who tore it down after Heritage Hills was HP, and that house is gone, and it's an empty lot. So it happens, and we can't let those things happen. So we do want good things for this house, but we do want the sidewalk. It was built after the CA had expired. The roof was torn off and replaced after the CA had expired. And always going back and getting things in compliance after the fact seems very counterproductive to me. We're not getting the results we would get if we could do it through the normal process. And so I think we're asking if there would be a time that we could talk about some of these bigger issues and try to figure out what the neighborhoods can do to support the commission and support the people in the field to get quicker and better outcomes for everyone.
Could someone refresh me on what did we approve on the addition, the last CA? Was it different exterior walls? Basically, was that what we did?
Yes,
New facade?
Yeah, it was a remodel of the existing addition. And I haven't looked at I haven't gone back and compared the old CA, so as far as the comment about it shifting over 4 feet, I would have to go back and look at that.
Because there was maybe it's like a walkway or something.
Okay, a walkway that they enclosed or removed or something.
I remember when that came up, I wished that was being demolished.
Right. I agree with Marva, and we've all, because of the things that happened today, if you're quick with a bulldozer, there are no consequences.
Yeah.
What if somebody goes out and tears a house down? What I hear being said is that the consequence, there is really no consequence. It's like, if you see your neighbor and you don't get the right guy out there to get in front of the bulldozer, then there is no consequence in a historic district for tearing a house down.
There is the appeals process. So say the HP Commission were to deny one of these applications, and then assuming the applicant then appeals that to the Board of Adjustment, and then if the Board of Adjustment were to decide with the HP Commission, if the applicant were to appeal it to district court, then there is a chance that a judge could decide that it needs to be reconstructed. But the odds, generally speaking, of requiring that kind of very specific performance are usually fairly slim. But that is within a court's power.
That means the commission cannot require it. The Board of Appeals cannot require it. We would just have to depend on a judge, somebody in a court, having the ability to tell somebody, well, you tore it down, and so now you have to build it back.
Right. The Board of Adjustment itself does not have the authority to say, you need to build this house.
But we can't say what the judge should say. We don't have that right or ability. Can we say that or not say that? Can they appeal that decision? Is that you tore something down?
Maybe this is a workshop discussion.
Well, it's just this whole day is
Yeah,
You know,
it's happened several
and the
times.
neighborhoods are very disappointed
Yeah.
because, they come, they spend their time, they go to these meetings, they think they're doing something, they show up, they are part of the discussion, and basically, I'm embarrassed that we have to say, oh, well, we're doing our best, and mitigate it to a situation that it's just really, it's not fair, it doesn't follow our guidelines, and it really proves to others, hey, be sneaky. That is the way to get ahead in HP districts. Because begging for forgiveness, you get a lot more of what you want than if you do it the right way.
You're here.
In our past experience, Board of Adjustment hasn't been especially helpful on a couple of these issues, like a roof, I remember, on 14th Street.
I would say we haven't had an appeal in quite a while, but we've held our own on our last several appeals. I think we've had,
I remember on 19th Street.
we've had a few where they've
duplex.
supported HP Commission's decision, and I think they've done a better job. Well, this is way beyond the scope of what we're supposed to be discussing, but I do think the current and recent Board of Adjustment has shown a real interest in supporting our boards, commissions, and committees,
And their
and not
membership
undermining
varies like
our
ours
authority.
does.
Yep.
So it could be different. The word on the street, maybe Margaret could help me remember, was this past owner wanted to keep that addition and keep that square footage because he was going to flip the house, and that kept more square footage to keep that addition. I hate to even call it an addition. I've seen the inside of that. Oh, that was, I could have built that maybe. I don't know.
We need to move on, but I have a question. Go ahead.
I would just say ask Holly to come up and explain the new proposal so that we can approve it.
Move on. Yeah, before we do, I have one question about the CA and building permit process. You get a CA, and it says good for 12 months with then extensions. Building permit is totally different. You open a building permit, it goes until it's closed out. So the time you've got is the length of the CA. You still have to have an active CA, even if you have a building permit.
Yes. Yep, the CA, you have to have, because so much of the work that we approve that you get a CA for doesn't even require a building permit. So that certificate of appropriateness has to be valid, has to be not expired while you are doing any work, even if you have a building permit that doesn't expire for however much longer. So if you go get your building permit and your CA expires in 3 days, you're probably going to need to get another CA.
So if you let it
because they both need
expire
to be
without
valid.
getting an extension, you have to get a new one.
Right.
They reapply, completely reapply.
You
start over.
I'm just sort of clarifying all that.
Just real quick, if I could address a couple of things. One about the roof. We were still operating under the previous CA when we were doing that, and when we were contacted, if you go to the back of the house, you can see that we stopped right there. I called the contractor, said, don't do anything else, because we've got some issues that we obviously have to address.
You didn't know the CA?
back of the house
You
is
didn't know
not
you didn't know the CA had expired?
This was before the previous CA expired. We were working with the intent of extending that CA.
Okay.
And that was our intention when we started work, but we were not trying to be sneaky about it, and we did stop work. And if the contractor, we had subs lined up to work, and everything got put on hold. We didn't, except for trying to do some repair as to avoid further work. I will tell you that she's right on that front sidewalk, and I can't explain that. I guess when they were doing the front porch repair, they poured the sidewalk out. I was not aware that they were doing that, and I did not even know that until I saw the pictures that Angela took. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. So now we're going to get on to the addition.
Proposed.
Holly, just a second. We have one other person who wants to speak.
My name is Linda Schultz, and I live at 1600 Classen Drive, so I'm an adjacent neighbor. And so since we've talked all that to death, the thing I'd like to bring you back to is the original footprint and the closeness to the garage. If it comes back to where it was with the two-story addition, I think that would work. I think the design on the one-story extension really doesn't fit the neighborhood. It brings it back to size with the rest of of our houses on that neighborhood, separates it from the garage, which all of our houses are. I mean, nobody's garage is 6 foot from their house. So I think that those are good solutions. And as an adjacent property owner, I'd ask that you consider that.
So you're supporting it? Proposal.
I'm supporting what the neighborhood suggested.
Okay. All right.
Okay, could I get some clarification? Linda? Okay, so the two-story addition that's proposed...
Who's talking?
Me, Suzanne. The two-story addition as proposed is okay with the neighborhood, as I read your comments, but the one-story is not compatible in design, and you would prefer that not be approved?
That's correct.
Okay.
That makes it the size of the rest of our houses and the same situation on the lot, property lines.
Well, we need to get into the discussion of the design then. Okay. We appreciate that.
Okay, well, I just wanted to get that in. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so you've heard that comment. How do you address the size issue, footprint, and the square footage?
Well, again, if we are limited to that existing footprint, which even Angela thinks is maybe this is a little unique circumstance given that what was previously approved, we are substantially less than coverage on the lot as well as in the addition. It's over 300 square feet less than the previously approved. So we really feel like we are reducing and trying to get back to the neighborhood typical size of house. And again, just to be devil's advocate, if we were forced to build that, since we demolished that CA,
So this guideline says the addition should not exceed 50% of the size of the footprint of the historic structure, or 750 square feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, since the demolition is technically a part of the CA, our existing square foot would be the before the demo, which is 4,297.
Historic footprint is 1514, so 50% of that would be 757, right? Pretty close to the 750. And your proposed addition is?
Well, she's saying that if we're, I see where you're going with this. If we're approving demolishing the existing addition, then we have to add the existing addition to the original.
But that's not the historic footprint.
Yeah, it says the existing historic structure, which I don't think too many of us would include.
We count other additions. Do we not count other additions?
I thought we went through this many times. I remember one in Edgemere Park. The historic footprint was original construction. Is that not correct?
Or the addition that was under a CA?
I think
it's original. How old was the addition?
Over 50 years old.
Oh, that's...
Over 50 years old. I mean, it was built in the 60s, the addition. The non-historic addition.
The one that's now gone.
That's our number one item today to be demolished. So, again, I mean, I don't want to be devil's advocate, but technically our square footage of the existing building prior to the demo is 4,297.
We're talking about footprint. Existing first floor before the demolition was 2564, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, yes.
Okay, so you're saying half that should be allowed, which would be 1280 or something, right?
And actually, it's a little more.
So that's pretty close to your proposed addition of 1282. So that's the issue. Historic footprint, or?
No, my proposed is, it's 376 on the second floor and 746 on the main level.
I'm looking on your sheet A 1.1, under
1113, yeah.
proposed addition, 1282 square feet, it says.
Is that including the porch, maybe?
It's a covered porch, first floor. I wish what stuff
these where you
commented next.
So that includes everything, including covered areas. But the question is still, is it the historic footprint does it include the addition?
I mean, hypothetically, just as far as the guidelines are concerned, it seems like if you were to include addition in that calculation, you could increase the square footage of a house.
Forever.
Definitely, right?
Yes, that was just talked
So
about.
it definitely says existing historic structure. We had, I think from some county assessor records, had assumed that the addition might have been done in approximately 1980, just because they recorded a remodel in 1980. But you were thinking from looking at it that it was older than that?
Based on the materials used.
Yeah. I mean, makes me sad to say it, but even 1980 is kind of old at this point.
That does make me cry.
Don't go there.
Yeah, be careful.
So I think that's kind of
It is
for
a
the
bit of a
commission's interpretation,
unique-
if you think that the addition is old enough to be included as the historic footprint of the structure.
Right. That's where I'm going. What,
Yeah. Or if
discussion?
you want to limit it to the original building.
Such a large addition that,
I mean, given the, just from an architectural standpoint, it seems like I do think the design, relates well to the existing structure. It's separated from the garage. I think the massing, I think it works.
I like it. I like the design.
Design.
It's just the square footage, I think, to me.
It goes in this little,
But I don't want you to feel like you'd be giving us some special, something special or not meeting that guideline, because since the demo is part of today's discussion, I mean, we don't know exactly where that maybe there was something there, but previously, it's hard to tell. So I think we have to look at it as, prior to the demo, what that square footage is. And we've made really a large attempt to reduce that number. We've done so by a net loss of over 300 square feet.
As opposed to the addition that was demolished. Okay, we have another question. Anything else?
certainly.
For Holly? Okay. Tag team.
This might be my last time. To go by that math, you're rewarding them for an addition that doesn't exist. And so it's not what the house was before the addition, because the addition is gone. So that at the point when this application is filed, that addition is not there, so it is that footprint. Unless the Sanborn maps tell us differently, and there was a different original footprint of that house, but they get bonus footage because they tore down something without permission to tear it down, so we reward them for that behavior, and that just doesn't even make sense.
Now, I think it's, if we pretended they hadn't torn it down yet, and they came in today, and the addition was still there, we would have, and they said, we want to take this addition off, and we want to put a different addition on.
And I understand that, Katie, but it's not there.
Yeah.
So when they filed that application, that addition was not there.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with what's there.
It still gets down to, does our guidelines say the historic, the original, is the historic the original? What was that, or does it include the addition? That's, even if they were still there, we would be asking that. Would we?
Right. And I think that's what Marva is saying, that because it's gone, we shouldn't be considering it. But I think if they'd applied to replace the addition before it was gone, we would have at least debated, is that addition part of the footprint or is it not part of the footprint?
What I'm questioning is if it was still there. Would it have been part of the historic footprint or not? That's, I think we need to decide that. Did the Sanborn maps say anything? I was looking at the...
I was
Yeah, the
curious.
Sanborn maps show the...
Where is that?
It clearly shows, when you put them, you tear it apart and put them side by side, gives you a better perspective of, to me, that crosshatch is the other addition.
I mean, I think regardless of the age of the addition, whether it was 50 years old or 35 years old or 60 years old, it's obviously not of the character of the house. It's obviously inappropriate. The massing of it is inappropriate. I think one thing that we have talked about on some previous cases where we've looked at existing inappropriate additions And even kind of along the same lines of being able to build back a large garage when you had a large garage, is that when a property has had a certain established square footage for a very long time, we've tended to try to be generous on letting people keep the amount of, or close to the amount of square footage that has been at that property. That's not something that's in the guidelines. That's obviously up for the commission's consideration.
At the same time, we've also talked about how many times people come back for an addition.
Yeah.
You know, can you get one? I mean, Holly, when you were designing this, did you, you say, hey, I need to follow the guidelines, and so I only have 750, or whatever it is, whatever our number.
I actually spoke with Angela about it, and she warned me of this, that potentially they could only consider that original footprint. That's why it's written in her handwriting, because to me, the understanding would be obvious that, this poorly done non-historic addition was removed. Well, we're all past that. So now when we're going to move forward with a new addition that's historically appropriate and meets the guidelines and is recessed back and not seen from the right-of-way, that we would try to still reduce it, but see it from that original square footage.
I mean, unfortunately, I think what I'm hearing is, if the addition was there, you could have come in and said, we would like to reduce this ugly addition, and this is our new idea. Now that it's gone,
substantially less.
It's hard to use that idea of we're going to make all of these changes. We're going to have to take down most of the addition. It's going to be smaller.
Although, just like we just reviewed that garage demolition as if it had not yet occurred, we are reviewing this demolition as if it had not occurred. You all could say, no, you can't demolish that addition right now, and then let them work through the citation process for demolishing that addition. You could deny that. That's item number 1 on the application day, is demolish existing addition. So we're treating it as if it had not yet occurred. You could say no to that and say no to everything else. Or you can say, yes, please demolish that horrible addition, and let's work on something better to go back in its place. And then within that framework, determine how much square footage is appropriate to go back within the guidelines.
Well, that's where I am. I think we've moved past the first, in my opinion. What is the historic footprint? What are we going to allow? Are we going to include the addition, or somewhere in the middle, or?
I don't think it should include the previous addition at all, myself.
As the historic footprint?
Correct.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
That we do not include that addition.
Now, what
Footprint of
happens
that
if
addition.
there is, 5 years ago, there's an addition, now they want to have another addition? Is that first addition part of the historic footprint because we had a CA?
Well, that's what I mean. That's kind of rolling.
No, I think an addition that was built 5 years ago is not the existing historic footprint.
So how long, how old? Is it 50 years? Is that?
I think that the commission has to just evaluate that on a case-by-case basis, on the age of the property, how the property's evolved over time, the compatibility of the addition to the property. And then I do want to say, beyond the mathematical calculation of how big an addition can be, you also have guidelines about the compatibility of the addition, the proportion of the addition to the historic structure. So something could be within that allowed size, and you could still say, this is not an appropriate addition, and it needs to be changed. Just because they hit those magic numbers doesn't mean the commission automatically has to approve an addition of any size.
Well, so with the same guideline, if something is a little larger, we could say it's compatible. So we have some leeway, right? So.
Yeah, I think it is a shall, so you would need to have a unique circumstance
So what
to say
would that be?
why you're allowing something to exceed that guideline.
In the absence of better numbers, it's increasing from 757 to 1282. Unless I get some better numbers, that would be the difference. According to my math, half of the footprint would be 757, close to the 750. And the proposed addition is 1282, according to sheet A1.1, which may include covered areas, we don't know. So it's about not double, about 40% increase. Unless somebody has better numbers, that's what I'm thinking about. And it's not the architecture. I do think it's compatible, in my opinion. Well, let's get the right numbers then.
First floor addition, 746, that's on A2.1. And
Say it again?
On page A2.1,
Yeah.
746, that's the first floor.
Okay.
Upstairs is 367.
Okay.
So it's,
1113.
yes,
Okay.
which is actually on the little box that I put. So that square foot on that, on the first there, that does include that patio. And I
Okay.
do that just for
Okay,
coverage
so it would
reasons.
be 757 increasing to 1113. That's our
Correct.
That's
Thank you.
our numbers. So it's about a 50%? No, I mean, not 30%? Let's see.
I understand, and I'll defer, I mean, we'll just disagree about that addition, that one first floor addition being appropriate for the neighborhood, but I would like for you to look at the distance from the garage and the fact that this is visible from Classen Drive, just like all of our garages are visible from Classen Drive and are separated. There aren't any photos of the neighboring houses, I don't think. So if in all this negotiating, there's some way to bring that more into compliance with the historic look of that street and that neighborhood and the rest of our houses, then I'd appreciate your attention.
What are you suggesting, Linda?
I don't know.
I mean,
that
I'm not really,
first floor addition just comes out too far.
first floor, oh, you mean the,
The master bedroom. Could we reduce?
That's a porch.
Is it possible to reduce the addition?
it goes, it's too close to the garage, is what you're saying.
Is it possible to reduce the length of that, say?
Linda, is this part of what your commentary about the visibility from 16th Street was?
Yes. Well, and you can also see, actually, there's I wish I had several more days, and I'm sure you did too, to spend on this, because it's a fairly detailed and complete remodel. So you can see the garage from 16th, and you're going to be able to see the addition, and so it's not all tucked behind the house. And I think it's fine, but I think it needs to be farther from the garage, and I think some of that is just covered walkway, right?
I mean, Linda, so, okay, from that point right there, from the far left, then that wall just alone is going to come 19 feet further there. Now that would make the house kind of like a square, which would seem,
Yeah.
that part's okay. The next part.
And really, that's within the square footage of
It's under the head. And then the next part is another 19 feet
For the master bedroom.
for the master bedroom, which,
I don't know how much is the covered wall.
with an additional 6.5 feet of a covered porch. So you would kind of see through that. So really 19, I mean, there would be a roof over that, but
I think if the back of the house was flat, it would not look appropriate. I like some sort of addition. Can the master bedroom be smaller?
yeah.
Yeah?
To read, not
I think
possible?
that's,
Just asking. So, because there's a one-story addition on the south as well.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan. I didn't realize you were.
I mean, not the south, the west.
The way
think we
we
still need
stepped
to-
it back, I cannot see in any way that you would be able to see this from Classen Drive. I mean, I am 9 feet from the addition, at the two-story addition, which is already stepped in 7 inches from the existing wall of the house. the very farthest. So, I mean, I make 2 indentions. I really disagree that you'll be able to see it
I
at
think
all.
you'll be able to see the 2-story addition, but that's not what they're objecting to. It's
Certainly, yeah.
1-story, so.
And again, you know, making that a 1-story addition was a way in which we could give some, you know, get the layout that we wanted, but obviously a 2-story addition is just more square foot, and we're limited on what we can do there. So our thinking there was just to keep that a 1-story element and match some of those details from the garage with the flat roof and the clay tiles, and we thought that that would be suitable.
Yep.
I think we're just stuck on the square footage of the master bedroom.
What's that?
Doesn't it come down to the square footage of the master bedroom has to be reduced to get closer or to the...
So it's not the distance to the garage that concerns you all?
I think that's part of it. The only way to get there is to make it smaller,
Okay.
to get to the numbers.
If we want to. We need to decide. I like the design.
I like the design.
And
I'm not opposed to the
it's just a
design.
question, are we going to
I think they need to
get closer?
In this situation, I think, unfortunately, you know, sometimes there's things have happened, and it's just hard to make that original decision, even though it's written on our packet. You must decide as if it happened.
And I don't think, I haven't identified a unique circumstance that would allow so much more square
I mean, what would
footage.
be that? I would feel uncomfortable actually coming up with a unique circumstance.
Yeah.
Just honestly, not trying to read, well, I guess I am in a way. It could be more compact. It wouldn't be as roomy as it is now. You could pull it in, rework the master bath, and it's huge. I mean, there's things you could do.
Absolutely. I mean, anything is possible. I'm not.
But we don't want to redesign it.
But you could do it.
We're
It's
just-
not like
right.
it's impossible.
I don't think we're denying the project.
Yeah. So, can we give her is there a number we'd be happy with?
I mean, the design's going to have to be, are you going to want to do it by Tuesday? Do you want to continue it? You have a lot of work to do, Holly.
It's all right. I'm not going to OU, Texas this weekend, so I can make it happen.
Oh, is that this weekend?
Decided to sit this one out. First time to miss in like 12 years. No, we can get it done by Tuesday. But again, how much and what's that based on? Because I know the square footage thing, I would definitely argue we have a unique circumstance there.
I don't think that we can give you a unique circumstance for going over the set number.
Based on the addition, the previous.
We cannot take the previous, can't take the previous addition into consideration.
And that's a substantial reduction from what we've...
But there might be...
That would be a total redesign.
We do have some latitude, but I guess Joe's saying, and I
With
think
the
we all
massing.
kind of agree that that's not the calculation to
I
use.
mean, what would be the unique circumstance?
Well, and I don't know that you would use the previously existing addition as part of the calculation, but I think what the applicant was hoping was that removal of that addition would at least be a unique circumstance.
I think it is.
To support a slightly larger addition, that you're going back with a smaller, more appropriate addition, even though it's
I agree.
above and over.
If the addition was there today. I'm sorry. That's the way I feel about it. If the addition was there today, I think we could negotiate. It's not there, and so whether we have to pretend and do this application or approve a demolition or give a CA, I don't know what the unique circumstance would be that would hold up. I mean, we have to say something that holds up. If Linda's not happy and she wants to go get an attorney, we have to be able to clearly say that is a unique circumstance that is allowed by our guidelines. And I don't think that I can think of one.
I mean, just to provide some guidance, if they did reduce, I mean, it seems like we're generally okay with the footprint if perhaps there's a little more distance between the garage and addition. If there's a little more distance between the garage and the addition, is that kind of, we can't redesign it, of course, but I think that's part of it. I mean, that's part of it.
That's part of it. I think it's possible it's not impossible to reduce the size. It would be hard to get probably to 750 square feet. It'd be half as big as it is now. So there's in between, sounds like Joe's not willing to.
Well, I just don't know what the unique circumstance would be.
Hi, I'm Andy Bruce. I'm one of the owners, not the previous owner who got the CA. We bought it from him and then shuffled it to this other LLC. So I think the unique circumstance would be, and trust me, I didn't like that old edition. I don't think anyone did. I think we can all agree that original one was bad. We didn't want it torn down for this very reason. We wanted as much square footage to get as much out of when we sold it. Matter of fact, one of our partners is a banker, and he about had a heart attack. But it accidentally got torn down, and now we're trying to make the best of the situation. So I think that's the unique circumstance. We're trying to not, lose our shirt over something. We're trying to make this house grand, and then,
I understand that, but we cannot say that. My unique circumstance is we feel sorry for the people because they're going to lose money. That is just not a unique circumstance that we're allowed to say.
No, I understand
And so
that.
that's what I'm saying. What is the unique circumstance? That people didn't read the paperwork, that they should have gone to, that they had a set of drawings, they should have maybe given the architect a phone call just to see where they were. I mean, there's many things that they should have looked at the date of the CA. I mean, there's so many things that could have happened that would have prevented this and so easily have gone the right direction. So, I mean, I just don't really see how, for me, that there's something I can say is a unique circumstance that would stand up in court for the neighbors to say, well, I understand that. I'm not going to, I don't know what it would be. Because we're here about the design.
Right, and I think we all agreed the design.
That into consideration.
The design looks great, especially compared to what was there.
And we hear that all the time. It's a lot better. I'm in agreement. It's a lot better. It's very attractive. We that's still not the situation. We have to follow the guidelines that we have. We have to follow our guidelines. That's all we have, and we have to follow them to the best of our ability.
Right, and a guideline is not, Jesus Christ himself, but I understand where you're coming from. But we had, 4,200 or 4,300 square feet in this monstrosity that stretched from the original footprint. And I agree with Alan, if you are actually judging, it should be on the original footprint. Otherwise, you're getting addition. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. But we had this monstrosity that went all the way to the garage, which was then converted to more living space and very hideous. Some of it didn't even have a foundation on it. And it accidentally got torn down because the plans that were approved by the previous guy who wanted the most square footage possible, they lost, they moved the wall over, eastern wall over 3 feet, so we need a new foundation and whatever, and he knocked it down, which he shouldn't have. So
You said the previous owner knocked it down?
No, I'm sorry, no, we did. The previous owner, working with Sam, drew up these plans. Sam tried to talk him into something that looked better. He said, no, we need it's already there. We're going to rehab the existing. You want to rehab the existing. So that's why that first CA that was approved went through, even though, and it was, Sam made the best of a situation. I thought it was a pretty good design, considering it's still connected with the garage and all that.
I still have a hard time that, you saw a wall, you thought it had been moved 3 feet, so you demolished the whole thing. I still don't see how that happened.
Trust me, I agree with you. And so now here we are months later trying to fix this.
Well, I think it's stuck in everybody's, mind here that it's hard to, give up the size of the addition when that happened. And there's been several others today. So.
Okay, so say if we removed our request for the demo CA, and we had a citation because it was torn down, essentially we could rebuild it right back where it was. In fact, without a CA, that's what we would have to do, correct?
Okay. What is that?
I'm just kind of trying to figure out, because
That's a new angle.
That is the square footage when we began, and so the previous CA kept every square inch of it, and so it was this giant house. So we really felt like the unique circumstance would be just that we are making this house better and more congruent with the neighborhood, rather than just taking advantage of this large and non-historic addition. That's the new owners kind of.
You would stand up to the microphone there so we can get your cord.
They wouldn't be able to build that back exactly the same because it's non-compliant. I mean, it's a non-compliant addition from the very beginning. Okay, good.
There's a hypothetical question.
So I think, I'm going to just say, I think we sound like we're at the point where we've given some direction, there's some concerns about the size. I think maybe the most appropriate thing to do is to continue this. The applicant, the architect, can kind of assess where you are with square footage, how much more you could reduce, and it doesn't sound to me like we're going to
I think there's a
one place or
there's a lot of pushback on the existing size.
I mean, I think that, you know, a unique circumstance could be feasibility. You know, if you compared the size of that bedroom to the other bedrooms in the house, if it was the same size as the largest bedroom. I mean, those are unique circumstances. I mean, we don't want to make you make a bedroom that's 12 by 12. That would be silly. But we have to be able to say, you know, I don't think we can say because they want a 19 by 19 bedroom plus a 6-foot porch around it is, you know, so feasibility, I would maybe look at that. That would be one way. You think that it's feasible. It fits within the house. It doesn't have to be the very largest room in the house. But if it's similar to other rooms, you know,
And
maybe
other facilities don't have to be maybe as extravagant.
Right.
All the rooms are pretty large in this house. I mean, they're big because it's a Grand Heritage Hills home, you know, so they're big. The original master was second floor, right?
18 by 17.
Yeah, it's 18 by 17. That's a second floor now, so we wanted to make the master a master, you know, with people are going to be spending $1 million on this
I'm saying
thing.
that's a possibility, so.
Sure, I want to second Alan's comment that there are inefficiencies in the plan, and, you know, the master doesn't have to be on the first floor. You could take 2 bedrooms upstairs and make them a master. Or, you know, I think there's ways to reduce it, you know, that would still make it a nice house. You know, I don't think there's anything here that's a unique circumstance that requires it to be this size.
I agree with Klaus, because we spent a long time today worrying about if somebody could park their F-150 in a garage, you know. I bought a car that didn't fit in my garage, and I sold the car and bought a smaller car. I don't think we need to design houses because we think people need a garage that's 23 or 4 feet long because they want to drive big cars, you know. They're fixing this house to sell it and make money, you know. It's about, if it has a lousy master bedroom, then it's easier for them to sell, you know. This is what I do for a living, too, so I get it. But the house has to be right for the neighborhood, and I think we have to strive to come up with something that is, you can see all of that backyard from 16th. Don't forget that. It's not, it's Class and View side. That's on that little weird peninsula, and you can see a lot of that. So, you know, I think when we get to the point where the HP Commission worries about what size of cars people drive, we're way off the mark on what we're here to do. And
We have to address it, though, because they bring it up, so.
well, you know, we can't, we don't let them build things just because they drive something huge,
Yep.
you know? So,
I know, well, we're digressing.
no, but your discussion is the size of a master bedroom that doesn't have to be that big, because you want to sell a house for a certain amount of money.
Yeah, well, I think the direction we're going is to ask for continuance, to continue this to allow you to maybe reduce size somewhat. If you want to, you don't have to.
Would you like to continue?
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to continue HPCA 1800157 to the
How long do you need?
Do you want November 7th?
November 7th.
Okay.
I would like to ask for a little more guidance if we are going to try to meet a Tuesday deadline to what is going to be, I don't want to go through it again, in other words, in a month, and say, oh, this 6 foot from the garage needs to be 9 foot, if we can address that now. So
I think if we're not considering the addition, the size of the addition that was torn down, which it sounds like commissioners are not going to consider that square footage, you're looking at the guideline, it's 750 square feet. I don't know.
Yeah, we just
haven't
went-
pulled that.
Yeah, we just
but-
went through that. So you,
Yeah.
by the guidelines, 750, the historic house is 757, half of it. You're at 1113.
So hypothetically, we take off that second floor addition, shrink the first floor addition to 750, and we're there?
Well, that would be ideal, but I think there's some wiggle room. The problem for you is you want a number.
We can't give you a number other than the 750.
I think we see that there's some, there should be some latitude, but those are the numbers that we're working with. 750, you're at 1113 right now.
Anything else in the design that is going to be addressed if we come back in a month, that we're going to have another continuance potentially on it?
personally
I'd like to
we feel
address that before we leave.
I think most of the time, we feel confident that, Holly's in the right direction, so I
I
don't,
think the staff report called out the big picture window over the bathtub. That's not typical on our historic structures. It's also, of all of the levels of visibility for the addition, that's probably the closest to a place where you could see it looking up the driveway. I don't know that the commission had real strong feelings about that.
I would
when
agree with
raised
that.
it, but that's not a typical installation that we see.
I think, see if you work with staff
I
on,
just
when you
copied
come
it
up
from
with...
the front picture window.
Okay, I was wondering about that. It's kind of covered by bushes.
If you work with staff, on some of those details, and when you're looking at it, if it's a little larger, think of what Joe said. What are your extenuating unique circumstances why you want it to be larger?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What would be your unique circumstances for justifying a larger size?
I will just note that we have approved some additions that exceeded the allowed square footage in the past, and generally those have focused on the massing of the addition, that it stayed compact and in proportion to the structure. So I think the size of it, combined with the discussion that we've had about the length of it and how far it extends back into the backyard towards the garage, I think if something got more compact and similar to the more square footprint of the house, it could, we have approved things like that that exceeded the square footage before when the massing was more appropriate.
I mean, because I would make that point just like Chris did, that I think that upstairs additional bedroom is probably less,
Important?
less important to the design or to the flow of the house than the downstairs. However, that addition or that piece, to me, it makes the house feel more complete and it's more appropriate.
Well,
in the
I don't know.
massing. So just a one-story L-shaped addition, which is in the 750, it doesn't suit the house massing.
We just have to look at it. I personally don't think that squaring off the back of a two-story house would be that attractive on this house, but you have to look at it.
At the same point, just because it meets the 750 doesn't mean we approve it. We still look at the form, the massing for the house, so. kind of
That's
like
why
we-
you're an architect.
Right, so that's ultimately my question. I can tell you this right now, that if we're going down to 750, that second story's going away for sure. And we're going to put it all downstairs
And we're
on
telling you that's
first.
not hard and fast as long as you come up with a massing or some reason to exceed that.
Right, so if there's, Katie says the length of it going back is a issue, is there any way you can tell me what that length should be?
They're not a number. It's all goes together. You know how architecture works. It all kind of works together. I mean, personally, to me, the length, it doesn't bother me as much. So it's just the massing of the total size.
Right, I mean, kind of personally, from an architectural standpoint, I feel, having it compact and to the house, whether it's 2 stories, I think that square footage is less impactful than, taking up a lot more kind of, yard space, taking up the site more.
Does
having
that...
more of a compact, addition, in a sense, something that, is kind of closer to the massing of the house, kind of tied against the
Hypothetically,
house. But, of course, I think, I agree with Alan, you want some differentiation, some push and pull. You don't want just a big flat facade. So I think, looking
Okay.
at a way to add that kind of depth to the facade, but possibly still keeping it compact the house to where it doesn't feel like a massive addition.
say that additional 6 foot of walkway space, which was just put on for convenience of the homeowner to try to get from the garage into the house without getting soaking wet, I mean, other than that, it serves no purpose. It's not wide enough to really have a seating area there. That could go away, and that might buy back the compactness.
That's not included in the square footage figures. It's covered, but it does help the setback from the garage issue, yeah.
So that could be an idea.
That's the massing and all that you have to just look at.
You might also just look at the properties that surround you and how deep do they go into their lots? How far away are they from their?
Right next door.
And
I
don't
think,
bring
I mean,
up
just
the
kind of
addition.
taking a look at those Google Earth view of what those might be helpful to. It's just a suggestion.
Okay.
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 Was there a
thank you,
motion
guys.
for continuance? Still next, till November? Okay.
Second. I think I seconded.
Motion second. Moved by Joe Meach and seconded by Neela Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, continued. Thank you. That was...
We have 2 items under other business. It's just
That's
to
good
approve our
discussion.
meeting schedule for 2019. We have to post those with the city clerk before the end of the year, so we ask you all to look at it.
Do we have a motion to approve?
We do. I was just going to see if there's anything special to point out. We have workshop. One is for the commission meetings, one is for workshops. There
Order in the court.
is, let's see, only one application deadline that's not on the first Tuesday of the month, just because of how it falls on the calendar. Everything, all the meetings are on the first Wednesday, except for January 3rd of next year. Is that right? I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything. January 3rd, 2020 is not on the first Wednesday, and that's, I'm sure, because of New Year's and such. So,
Okay, is there a motion for approval of both of them at once? Both of them at once?
separate, Paula says separate,
Is there a
please.
motion of approval of A?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Neela Clements, a second. Excuse me. And seconded, could you, all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Trying to rush here. Okay, that first schedule is approved.
I move approval on the 2019 commission workshop schedule as well.
Second. Nope. Moved by Neela Clements and seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that schedule is approved. And on to communications.
And Katie, if I could ask about, only a couple of us could come to the last workshop. In December,
Sorry
we're
about
going
that.
to talk 2019 for Heritage Hills for the 50th anniversary discussion? Or
Yes, I think we will talk at the next one about 50th anniversary stuff. We also had some correspondence about small cell towers and trying to get presentation or some information from those companies about kind of what they're doing, and they talked about different stealth tower installations. Still kind of figuring that out as far as a meeting and whether it would be with HP Commission, or we actually had some thought within our division about opening that up to our other design review bodies because they're dealing with these too. So.
And the Heritage Hills group may be.
I thought that they had ruled that they could do what they wanted as long as they stayed in.
So there are, local governments are having to adopt some reasonable, objective criteria that are published in advance, and they need to be adopted here really pretty quickly.
Because October 1st was the date.
No, November 1st is the date that the state law becomes in effect, but there was a recent FCC ruling that will be effective, anyway, they want to have those within 180 days after the order itself is published for the FCC.
And that Heritage Hills might be coming to the workshop to join us on that discussion about next year.
Yes.
That's what they're thinking.
The anniversary deal?
And I think we'll maybe talk with them and figure out if we want that to be a workshop for the full commission or if we want to do a separate meeting just for the folks that want to do 50th anniversary stuff to get together at a different time.
That might be a good idea, just keep it informal. Okay, on to communication reports, administrative approvals, several.
Nothing on any of this in particular to discuss. We don't have anything under City Council, Board of Adjustment, Planning Commission this time.
No ad hoc committee, report, municipal counselor. Keep it short. Okay. The
I'm
next
sorry
meeting,
to interrupt. I want to jump real quick back to the workshop in December. Is there any way we can include some kind of outline of how the CA process works from, like a citation standpoint? Because I know we had a lot of discussion today about kind of what happens if someone demos a building and then, because
Yep, I
that's a
think we could
discussion another day,
absolutely
but
have
that'd be-
have maybe someone from code enforcement, Laura Yates come and talk about kind of if someone has a citation and they don't get approval after the fact for what was done, what does happen next? What's the rest
she
of
the
the
one
process?
that was at the big commission meeting? Yeah, that was pretty enlightening. Okay, ready? Next meeting date for the Historic Preservation Commission, October 3rd at 2 p.m., Municipal Building, City Council. What? Why does it say that?
Just because we didn't fix it.
How about November?
Okay.
Yeah, November 7th.
November 7th, I'm just reading what you got. Okay. November 7th, 2018, at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received, is that
October
right?
2nd.
October 2nd, 2018.
Yep.
New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, October, let me look it up.
9th. Yeah, October 9th. We'll fix it. Sorry about that, guys.
October 9th, okay? The next regular scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, is that right? December 12th?
Yes.
2018, from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 420 West Main, Suite 900. Any items from commissioners?
Yes, I wondered, is there any movement on filling our open commission seats?
Yes.
Not that I've heard lately. Nothing has been on council. They did appoint some folks to some other commissions recently, so I know some of those are starting to move through the pipeline.
I heard the mayor mention that he's making progress in the council meeting, but hasn't got there yet.
And often we don't hear anything until we get a letter that says someone's been
Yeah.
appointed.
Okay, anything else from commissioners? All right, citizens be heard? None? We are adjourned. Thank you.